Hey everybody, we're ready to talk about some Lorebeards 40k and talk about some Magnus the Red.
Heck yeah, you ready for some magic? Because I got that magic in me. Woo.
Space magic.
It's totally not warp magic.
No, absolutely not. There's no way that who could possibly get those things confused.
Definitely not the space wolves. But
No,
we're not
no.
talking about them today.
I mean, a little bit
Well,
maybe,
yeah, we
but
have to mention them.
just a little bit, but not
We have
much.
to mention all the magic.
Magic. So, Alexis, who are you?
I have no idea. Anyway. Hi everyone, I'm Norn Queen Alexis. I am a massive nerd. I play way too many tabletop RPGs, mostly Warhammer related. I am a Viking reenactor. I am a professional painter, a voice actress, and a game designer. I do a lot of shit. None of it any good, but I do it all.
Well, her commission painting is strong, and her cosplay is strong. I
Yeah.
haven't seen her fight, but I assume she's a good fighter though, because she does it a lot. So I'm going to assume that
I
you're quite good
mean,
at that,
yeah. I got some bruises all over me right now.
right? I mean, definitely doing the thing. So I am Ross Watson. I am a game designer and writer. I have worked on nearly all of the Warhammer 40k role playing game line books. I have written for several Warhammer 40k video games like Battlefield Gothic Armada,
Which needs to
and
come back.
which needs to come back. And it's part of the classics bundle now, isn't it?
Yeah, the first one is.
And I was on the U.S. White Dwarf team for a couple of years, so I know 40k really well. And I'm excited to be here today to talk about one of my favorite subjects: Magnus the Red, the Burning of Prospero, the Council of Nicaea, and the Webway Project, all of which are linked together. It's gonna be fascinating.
Wait, somehow it needs to go back to the war in heaven and monkeys.
Okay. Fortunately, I don't think we need to go back to the Lord Heaven today.
Uh, you never. We're gonna stumble our way into it.
I mean, it's adjacent because the webway, but it's only just barely adjacent.
I do like that the Imperium took thousands of years to try to even attempt the Webway project. Meanwhile, orcs get a White Dwarf article that's just like they used a giant shock attack gun to create webways.
Well,
By
orcs are like
brute
that. When you need something weird that just like happens to show up for no apparent reason, orcs.
orcs.
Got a super chat for Biofoot. Hey, welcome, Biofoot. If Magnus doesn't fail, son, is he still Magnus? Good question.
Look, Magnus was told not to do something, and he did that wrong.
He did that very wrong. He did indeed. So, I think we should just briefly talk about some of the things that we're going to talk about. We have to establish certain, like, who is
Briefly.
this person and what were they working on and why did this all happen. Um,
Where do we start? So, long ago in a foreign land, I, the Emperor, set forth to oppose chaos. I'm joking. That's a Samurai Jack reference, though.
it
So,
is, and I do love Samurai Jack.
oh, it's amazing. It is so good.
Foolish samurai.
It's so good. So, long ago in a distant land known as Terra, the Emperor sat upon his throne and had himself a big think. One was to get his sons back. The other was to make the finish the Webway project or start the Webway project. We never know where he actually was in terms of that project. We know that it was an ongoing project and Magnus ruined the whole thing. What the Emperor wanted to do was he wanted to make it so that humanity no longer needed to use the warp for travel because warp is scary and filled with nightmare demons from hell dimension. And that's not really good for your health or mental stability, it turns out. So, the Emperor, being super smart and definitely psychic and can foresee every possible future in the history of forever, in fact, it's mentioned multiple times in every book, he didn't see this coming. Somehow it slipped his mind. The Emperor fell back from his Great Crusade, left it in the hands of Horus. Horus was all like, I'm big and important now. And all the Primarchs were kind of like, are you though? Are you really? You kind of are, but not really. I'm going to team up with the guys that don't like me against the people who actually have respect for me. Horus Heresy ensues. The Emperor was sitting upon the throne, and while he was trying to connect to the webway, Magnus decided to make a phone call to warn him about the heresy that was happening from his favored son, Horus Heresy. It's Horus Lupercal, but the joke is that his name is Horus Heresy. Anyway, Magnus tried to warn the Emperor, but he couldn't get through to the Emperor through the astropaths. So he did what was forbidden, which was to contact the Emperor directly using super psychic powers from Hell Dimension, which wound up breaching the tube-like network of the webway, causing untold billions of demons to flood into the webway. The Emperor was like, holy crap, you messed up every single thing ever. He gets up off of his throne, still mentally maintaining it the entire time, has all of his sisters of battle and all of his custodies fight in the Webway Project, along with a couple of titans and junk.
Sisters of Silence.
Sisters of Silence, sorry, my bad. I've messed those two up. The Golden Girls. They are anti-demon, anti-psyker, anti-warp entity fighters. Dracnion, who is the Emperor's, the result of the Emperor killing somebody a long time ago, decided to fight the Emperor at this point, figured out how to fight Sisters of Silence, which is a pretty cool book written by Erndensky Bowden called Master of Mankind. It's one of the best in the Heresy series. So as this is all happening, all because of Magnus, the Emperor loses most of his custodial force. Then he has to fight the Heresy because it's coming to the Imperial Palace, loses even more of his custodians. And if he just maintained his custodians, he could have actually forced Horus to retreat completely or destroyed him, because he would have been able to fight back against Horus and have all of his personal bodyguards, including most of his Sisters of Silence, with him. But because of the webway being shattered, Janita Krall had to lead the battle outside of it, while her most trusted Oblivion Knights led the battle inside the webway. All of this culminated in the Emperor getting wounded by Dracnion, which may or may not have affected his fight later on against Horus. It's really unclear if it did, but it's mentioned that it was a painful hit on him, so I assume it affected him. And in doing so, Horus was able to score a fatal shot on the Emperor, while the Emperor completely fucking went Exodia on him and obliterated him. Horus lost the whole game and was cast into, oblivion. All of this is because Magnus couldn't just fly to Terra to tell his dad, because nobody in 40k uses faster than light travel. They all have it, they just barely use it because warp travel is faster. If they would just have used warp travel to go to the Emperor and just go, hey dad, Horus got stabbed by a magic poop knife that turned him to chaos, and it revealed that you tried to steal powers from the dark gods and everything. I saw this in a vision where you were a crow. The whole thing could have been avoided. Is that a good summary?
I mean, it's a summary.
It's an entertaining summary.
Juzina Kwaishian says this astral projection could have been an email, which I agree. And he also pointed out that the Webway project was just so that the Emperor could go to Cormorog for the freaky elves.
I mean, have you seen the booty on your brain? They had to extend her base.
Oh my God, Becky, look at her base.
I understand Gilliman now. He's like, we must destroy the Xenos. Looks at your brain. The other Xenos.
Got a super chat from Biofoot. Big E, meaning the Emperor, might be a terrible leader, father, and scientist, but he's a damn good rapper, so you got to give him props for that.
Big E, yes.
Very good. Freder Trader, thank you so much. If Magnus heeded the warning, I could see Erebus pulling some shenanigans. Corfarin and Erebus poured too much effort, faith, and resources. I will talk about this. Definitely. You're hitting on something interesting here, and it is part of what we're going to discuss. And we got Rush 21129, member for 4 months. Woo! Off-topic question. What is it? What is the off-topic question?
No, that is the question. We'll never find out.
maybe this is it. He says,
I assume it's this.
if Rain once brought back some thousand suns from dust before blasting them into the warp, is the source of that power the same-ish as faith, and soul stones are different altogether?
So, okay, hold on. It's complicated because it's none of those things. It's undead Eldar god magic that undid the what was the spell called?
Rubric of Ahriman.
Yeah, the Rubric of Ahriman, because I keep wanting to call it the Rubricae, but that's the Primaris thing. Just, GW loves words that are very close to each other.
Rubicon Primaris is what you're
Rubicon Primaris. But the Rubricae, your brain undid it, showed it to Ahriman, and was just like, hey, bye. And he's just sitting there like, you know what? I'm done with this war. I'm leaving. Because apparently that is the end of that war, by the way. Like, that happens, and then I guess he just went, yeah, I'm going home now. I'm sad.
The source of Ivrain's power is not the same as the power of faith in 40k, because the power of faith in 40k, as we have a whole episode on that, is about the power the Emperor gives to those who have faith in him. What Ivrain was doing there is channeling the power of Ennead, or Ennead, however you want to pronounce it. And that is a nascent, growing god of the dead of the Eldar. So that it is similar in that it is coming from a divine being, but it is not, in fact, the same as the power of faith. Soulstones are different than what Ivrain does. That is absolutely true. Because what soulstones do is they capture a soul upon its leaving the body after death. And what Ivrain's mere presence as the high priestess of Ennead, her mere presence can keep Eldari from losing their souls in the normal way that you would need a soul stone to capture it. Instead, they get sent to an afterlife with Ennead. Yeah, at least that's what we believe to be true. That is what we believe to be true.
Also, she believes that to be true.
And Ivrain believes that to be true. So there we go. And we've got Sebastian Miller. Thank you so much. He says, Emperor, think, Magnus, think. Good callback to Invincible there. I love it. And another super chat, Ice Veins, says, how do you feel Magnus would have felt or acted knowing he was intended to sit upon the golden throne? Would he do so willingly? We're going to talk about that.
I think, without us talking about the what if scenario, I think if the Emperor offered it to him now, he would. I think that would be, like, if he just went, I want you back.
When you say now,
I mean current 40k lore. Not Heresy lore, but current day Demon Magnus. I think that he could redeem him and then have him sit upon the golden throne. That is, of course, assuming the Emperor sends into a god.
Okay, I'm going to assume the opposite, that Ice Veins is talking about pre-Demon Magnus. Pre-Heresy Magnus. If Magnus had known that he was intended to sit upon the golden throne, I believe he would have seen that as being a very important destiny for him. And
it would have fit his Odin motif, which for some reason Magnus has.
Amongst and many others.
Yeah, it's just very weird that Magnus is Odin and he leads Egyptians.
Well, I think we're going to talk about this a little bit more, because it does seem intended for Magnus's future role to have been the one to sit upon the golden throne. And you have to look no further than the name of his own legion for that, the 1,000 Sons, because we know 1,000 Psykers are sacrificed to the throne daily. So it's very possible that he would have said, yes, this is a good destiny for me. I will do this. I will be the one who guides the Astronomicon. I feel like he would have seen it, because Magnus was very intellectual. He was very interested in the warp and how the warp worked, the Immaterium and the Empyrean and the flows of warp energy. I think if the Emperor had come to him and explained this in much more greater detail, what he intended for Magnus to do, I think Magnus would have been perfectly fine with it. I think he would have been willing.
Funny enough, sitting upon a golden throne and staring across the entire universe, he sounds more like Heimdall than any of the other gods.
I mean, you could look at it that way.
Yeah.
I should point out that all these super chats are fantastic. We're so grateful for all of them. They are truly the best way to support our channel, to support us specifically. If you want to see more great content from Lorebeards 40k, we are very grateful for all of your support in the form of super chats because they are the best way to keep us going. All right. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, is that the new? That's the Millennial Harden. Is this? I can't. I'm
I
trying.
can do it with both
There's
fingers.
there's like one that's just two
There's
fingers.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the newest one. And then there's ours,
The old
which
one.
is the heart,
Yeah.
which is still the one I do. I
Same.
mostly do that one.
All right, guys, here we go. Let's stretch it out. Okay.
So who is Magnus?
Well, of all of the tragedy within a tragedy moments of the Horus Heresy, there is perhaps none more brutally ironic than Magnus the Red's projection of his psychic power to Terra. He did it out of love of the Emperor and out of a desperate desire to avert a catastrophe. But instead, it became one of the most destructive individual acts in Warhammer 40,000, the setting, because it destroyed the Emperor's secret webway project, it flooded Terra's underbelly with demons, and it provided Horus with the exact justification he needed to doom Magnus's homeworld of Prospero and push Magnus right into the arms of the Chaos Gods. The question of what would have happened had Magnus simply obeyed the Emperor during the thing called the Edict of Nicaea, if he had been able to swallow his pride, if he had sent his warning through some other channel, astropathic or via ship, or even if he just kept it to himself entirely, it's one of the most debated what-if moments in all lore of Warhammer 40,000. To understand, sorry, go ahead.
There's so many parts of this where it's like, okay, he could have done the right thing, and he didn't. He could have done this, but he didn't. It was like he went through the game and played through the correct path too many times, and this time he's just like, I'm going to select all the bad paths and see what happens.
Fair enough. So let's start with who is the Emperor. The Emperor of Mankind. The Emperor is amongst the oldest beings in the setting. He's an immortal perpetual psyker, believed to have been born somewhere around 8,000 BCE in Anatolia. His psychic power is so immense that it altered his genome in the womb, at least that's what we think, and rendered him unable to die naturally. For nearly 38,000 years, he walked the earth in disguise as a wandering sage or an advisor to kings, a religious figure, a court magician. He guided humanity through its darkest periods without ever revealing his true nature.
Except for that whole time when, cyborg warlords took over Terra.
Well, now we're getting to that. So the Emperor believed that his role was to steer humanity along a narrow path to survival that only he could see. The Emperor has some profound flaws. We're going to talk about this. He is simultaneously the strongest psyker we know of in all of Warhammer 40,000, and also one of the most profoundly flawed beings ever in general. He's not a good dude. But by the time we get to the 30th millennium, the Age of Strife had devastated humanity. Warp storms had cut off interstellar travel. Psykers were emerging in uncontrolled numbers across the species. The Age of Strife, or what's called Old Night, had plunged most human worlds outside of Terra into barbarism. And Terra itself was under the rule of various warlords and witch kings and was a fractured, irradiated mess.
Damn, if only he had amazing psychic powers of prediction that could have seen this coming.
So this is when the Emperor was like, the moment is it's time to act in the open. So he revealed himself. He started what's called the Unification Wars on Terra, conquered the planet using his genetically engineered warriors called Thunder Warriors. and then launched the Great Crusade, which is a galaxy-spanning military campaign to reunite all of the human-settled space, all of the human-settled worlds under his own singular, secular imperium of mankind. His philosophy... Go ahead.
And nothing went wrong. Everything was successful.
His philosophy was explicitly anti-religious. He wanted humanity to abandon superstition and faith, particularly faith in the chaos gods, and embrace instead reason and science. He
benefited him.
He created 20 or 21, depending on who you ask, Primarchs. These were genetically engineered sons, demigods in a lot of ways, each a superhuman being designed to lead a legion of space marines and prosecute the Great Crusade. The Emperor was extraordinarily secretive, even with those closest to him, and the Webway Project, which was his masterwork, was unknown even to the Primarchs. Maybe possibly Dorn knew about it, I would have to assume. But his unwillingness to communicate his full plans to his sons, including Magnus, is widely considered a central cause for the Horus Heresy. The Horus Heresy, very, very briefly, was a galactic civil war. It split the Imperium in half, and it led to 10,000 years of truly awful, horrific oppression of humanity by humanity.
And one hell of a good game.
And one hell of a good game. All right, we got another super chat from Biofoot. Big E was also central in the East-West rap war.
Could you imagine, like, he cast off his rag that he's wearing, and he's actually just 9 foot. Oh, sorry, the Emperor's 15 foot tall minimum.
Yeah, but he's got like a giant clock that he's wearing around his neck.
He has
somebody dropping the beat.
He has a grill.
That would be hilarious.
His servo skulls have grills.
That'd be funny. Yeah, start playing 8 Mile somewhere. Okay, so that's who the Emperor is. Who is Magnus the Red?
So Magnus the Red is a cyclopean giant amongst his Primarch brothers, but he wasn't always like that. He made a deal with a god that he thought would give him knowledge. It did give him knowledge, and it took his eye as a payment. Think Odin. And in return, Magnus got to see the future. He also got to see a bunch of different futures that Tzeentch picked out for him. It turns out malicious chaos gods are evil. Who would have guessed? But on the planet itself, Magnus is the red because his skin is literally a crimson red or a fiery red, sometimes pink. It depends on the artwork.
Pinkish red.
Yeah. He is a tall psychic librarian. And I mean librarian as in, like, he collects books. His whole philosophy was based around learning as much about human cultures all around the galaxy as much as he could and centralizing it. He wanted his Marines to be fully educated. He wanted his Marines to be able to teach the local population. And in all fairness, he was a benevolent Primarch. Also, his legion was walking around with things that could be misconstrued as demons, but, oopsie daisy. His legion did have the most psychers out of all of the legions, except for maybe the White Scars. We don't know their true numbers, but then again, they didn't write the White Scars until the very end of the Heresy. But
no,
Magnus,
they were the most. They definitely had the most.
Yeah, and Magnus did everything in his power to benefit the Imperium. But at the end of the day, the things that he was doing were too detrimental to the Imperium outside of his and the Emperor's careful guidance. Where the Emperor viewed Psychers as extremely dangerous, except for him, because obviously he's perfect. Definitely not a flaw in the Emperor's point of view. Magnus truly thought that evolution required psychic potential, and he wanted to usher that into a golden age of the Imperium. But he's a good guy that got tricked by an evil deity. It's the best way to put it.
Got a super chat here from Ice Veins. He says, Magnus kept trying to ward the Emperor of Mankind, beloved by all through conventional means. Unfortunately, Magnus kept getting Dad's voicemail.
He should have talked to... There's a whole other person he could have talked to.
Listen, we're going to get it. We're going to get into it. We just got to lay the groundwork.
Could you imagine if he just stopped for a second and went, I'm having a profound vision about Erebus messing with Horus and Horus betraying the Imperium and everything that we stand for. Armin, quick, stop that stupid ritual and go to the Imperium. Go to the Emperor, tell him. Or better yet, I'll just teleport there because I can do that, apparently.
Well, I think that might have had the same impact as what he actually did. So, Magnus, he's Magnus the Red. He's the Primarch of the 15th Legion. He was separated from the Emperor at birth when the Chaos Gods scattered the Primarchs across the galaxy.
Or Erda did.
Magnus landed on a planet called Prospero, which was a world of educated, psychically gifted human survivors who had formed a sophisticated civilization during the Age of Strife. And he was raised there, Magnus was raised there, by a scholar named Amon. And Amon helped Magnus grow up to become immersed in Prospero's culture of learning and mysticism and psychic research. Magnus was towering even by Primarch standards. He's like one of the biggest Primarchs. And commonly he's depicted only with a single eye. This is typically associated with a bargain that he made, an infamous bargain that Magnus made with some great being in the warp, which is believed to be Zeech, to halt a problem in the gene seed of his legion, which was called the Flesh Change. The Flesh Change is a runaway mutation caused by warp corruption in the gene seed of the Thousand Sons Legion, the 15th Legion, and it periodically turns Space Marines into mindless chaos spawn, usually when they exert their psychic abilities either without discipline or to an uppermost limit of what they're able to handle.
It's so funny to me, Ross, because at any point he could have just gone, oh, we should probably chill with our psychic powers and we'll probably last a lot longer. Let's tell Dad this. And Magnus is just like, it's fine.
Intellectually, Magnus was the undisputed greatest psyker amongst the Primarchs, possibly second only to the Emperor, although it's difficult to say because Malkador is the second most powerful human psyker that we know of. Magnus.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. We don't know who has stronger psychic powers. I'm sure there's somebody out there with like insane levels of like, they read the books like this to read every in-between word and has power scaled it. We're just going to say that one of those two is the strongest. It depends on the day and where the sun is.
I feel like Magnus would be stronger in general just because of his transhuman physiology. But I think that Malkador was more experienced than Magnus.
Does that make him stronger or does that make him have higher endurance?
I mean, technically higher endurance makes you stronger. So, I mean, I feel like Magnus certainly has the potential.
I would say that. I would definitely
be stronger than Malkador. But Malkador has a lot more experience than Magnus ever did, frankly.
Yeah.
Until obviously after post-Heresy. So
yeah,
pre-Heresy, Malkador had the edge in experience. So Magnus's abilities were varied. He could read minds. He could project his consciousness across stellar distances. He could peer through the warp to observe distant events. He could manipulate reality at a fundamental level. He was very, very strong. He was also a scholar of extraordinary breadth. He amassed probably the largest private library in the entire Imperium at that point on Prospero. The great library of Tizca is amazing. It's essentially like a Great Library of Alexandria reference.
This is why I think that Rabute Gilliman and him would have been super close.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if they had the chance, I think they would have got along famously.
Yeah, like they would have been exchanging books and strategies.
That's right. So Magnus, he pursued knowledge across every discipline from science to sorcery, and he did not distinguish any, he was like, this is all part of knowledge. It's all something I need to learn. But his fatal flaw was his pride, or perhaps his hubris, if you want to think of it that way. Specifically, Magnus had an unshakable confidence in his own judgment and an inability to accept limits placed on his curiosity. He genuinely believed that knowledge itself was neutral and that he, uniquely, could wield forbidden lore without being corrupted by it. Now, the Emperor recognized this flaw, possibly because the Emperor has the same flaw, I should say, but
No,
struggled.
obviously the Emperor doesn't, because he doesn't think he does.
The Emperor he struggled to communicate the reason for the limits that he placed on Magnus, and he couldn't find a way to put it in terms that Magnus could really accept. Now, their relationship is one of the closest of all the Emperor Primarch bonds ever. The Emperor and Horus had a very strong bond, but so did the Emperor and Magnus. Very, very strong bond. The Emperor and Magnus spoke to each other telepathically while Magnus was still in the womb. At their first meeting on Prospero, they embraced like old friends. They were very close. However, their relationship was also, it led to one of the most consequential moments in the entire history of the set. Go ahead. I know you're waiting. Go ahead. Say it.
The best part is both of them looked at each other and went, "Your pride is gonna damn us all." And both of them didn't believe each other.
That's true.
Also, I see Wolfboy has posted this a few times, and I do want to bring it up.
He's right. It's a very similar name too. Nicaea, I think, is the one for the Bible with a C instead of a K. But it's very much the same. It's reference. It's definitely a reference.
Yep. Oh,
so
man.
The Thousand Sons. Who are the Thousand Sons? The Thousand Sons are the 15th Legion. They were always the smallest of the 20. If you count the way I count, 20 legions.
Well, there are 20 legions, but there are 21 Primarchs.
They were the smallest of the legions, which is something of an irony given their name. The Thousand Sons, their original recruits were drawn from the psychically gifted survivors of Terra's, how do you say this, Achaemenid Empire? The Achaemenid Empire?
Read it as the Achaemenid, like, I don't know. Words.
They'd been under Imperial rule long enough to be relatively stable and compliant. Before Magnus found them, they were already notable as the most powerful psychers in the legions, and their librarians outclassed those of any other legion. This is before Magnus found them. They were always very highly psychic. But when Magnus reunited with his legion on Prospero, he transformed it into something that was closer to what he wanted. And the legion was reorganized around 9 fellowships. These are very similar to companies in other legions. And they were each led by a powerful psyker. Their squads were led not by combat veterans, but by those who showed the highest psychic potential. Within the fellowships, there were cults. These were, specialized schools of psychic disciplines covering different branches of sorcery. Stuff like divination, biomancy, telekinesis.
Geomancy.
Each cult was an entire tradition of occult study unto itself. The emphasis was always on quality over quantity. Every Thousand Sons Space Marines was expected not to be just a warrior, but also a scholar and a sorcerer. All three. Like he wanted nothing but the best. By all accounts, their power on the battlefield, the Thousand Sons, was extraordinary. They could see the future. They were nearly impossible to ambush. They used telekinesis to destroy vehicles. They could read the minds of the enemy and find out what their intentions were. They brought psychic force to every engagement that no other legion could match.
That's why I absolutely love that the only reason Lehman Russ got as much damage on his Legion as they did is because they had the Sisters of Silence protecting them.
Yeah, well, that's
Without those sisters, he would have been absolutely dog walked.
she's talking about the burning of Prospero, which is an event that happens later. We're actually not going to talk about it too much, but we should do a whole episode on the burning of Prospero. I really would like to. So the weakness of the Thousand Sons Legion was the flesh change. We talked about this already. That runaway mutation that could happen. They had survived nearly being extinguished by it before Magnus showed up, and the Primarch always kind of stabilizes some of the flaws of his legion when he arrives. Every legion had flaws. In every legion, those flaws were diminished once the Primarch arrived. It was like their very nature kind of helped stabilize the gene seed. However, Magnus took this to a different degree. Magnus was like, I have to stop this. These are my sons. And I love them, and I have invested all this time and energy teaching them how to do all their abilities, and they learned all the scholarly things. They have brilliant minds, and I don't want to lose them. So this is why he made that bargain with the being he found in the warp to say, okay, if I accept your help, you will help me keep my sons from turning into these horrible mutated monsters. And that being was like, yes, of course I will help you. Of course I will.
He failed the insight check.
Ahriman, who is the first captain of the Thousand Sons and one of Magnus's greatest pupils, he was also very concerned about the flesh change. Ahriman's own twin brother had fallen victim to the flesh change and had to have been mercy killed, essentially. So Ahriman also was like, yes, we have to do something about this. This is crazy. So that is, just keep that in mind, that is a vulnerability that underpins nearly every decision that Magnus makes and Ahriman makes leading up to the heresy. All right, and let's see here. We need to talk about go ahead.
There is a comment I want your insight on.
Micah says Psychers can do every type of magic, while Mage's Fantasy can only do one most of the time. Interesting.
Psychers in 40k tend to study one branch of psychic powers, but they can branch into other things. It's just rare. Like, you can have a Psyker that's a Geomancer, and they study that nonstop. You can have Sanctic Demonology and study that nonstop. But you can also just be like, Smite, Hand Lightning.
Well, I think the distinction here is that the Thousand Sons were trained in a much wider breadth.
Oh yeah.
Because Magnus was such a master of psychic abilities, that his teachings led to much wider varieties of ability than your typical Space Marine librarian. Your typical Space Marine librarian does pick a discipline, and that is what he does. But that isn't. She's right. That's how it's taught. But there are some psychers who have just the aptitude to be able to learn more than one discipline. They typically don't, but it's it is possible to have that. Okay.
It's also super unique, especially if a human does it. A human does it, the rogue traders come and run, not rogue trader, an inquisitor's like, mine. I need this for my retinue.
Sometimes the Assassinorum grabs them. Sometimes, it depends.
Black ships grab them.
So let's talk about the Webway project.
So the Webway, it's a series of tubes. But who created the Webway? How did the Webway come into being? We could bring this back to a certain...
Well, this is where we get adjacent to the War in Heaven. The Webway is an ancient hyperdimensional network of tunnels built by a now extinct xenospecies called the Old Ones. They predated even the Eldari. And the Webway sits in the space between reality and the warp. Critically, these tunnels are psychically sealed and warded, meaning they exist outside the immaterium. Traveling through them it's not quite instantaneous, but it's like effectively instantaneous. It takes a very short amount of time to travel very long distances. in the webway. And
What is
traveling.
It's instantaneous in real space, not instantaneous in the webway.
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah.
It is also completely insulated from chaos and demons and the perils of warp navigation. The Eldari use it to this day as their primary means of both travel and communication. Hey, we've got a friend or trader super chat. Why did Magnus deal with Tzeentch? Is he stupid? He's not stupid. He's advanced.
Okay. There is a quote from a certain TV show that I love bringing up. Magnus has been outsmarted by a dumbass. Like, Magnus made a deal with Tzeentch without knowing that Tzeentch was Tzeentch, which is perfectly within Tzeentch's domain. The Changeling is probably the one that actually brokered the deal. Or it was the Blue Scribe who brokered the deal. But one of the greater demons, or Tzeentch themselves, I doubt it was Tzeentch themselves, made the deal with Magnus to give them the information in exchange for part of his physical being.
The eye.
Don't give demons physical objects.
So, yeah, I want to be really clear. Magnus is not dumb, but he's also not wise. He's a very, very smart individual who didn't have a lot of experience with the warp. And he's also, let's keep in mind, he has that massive self-confidence that is sometimes misplaced self-confidence. In this case, he's like, oh, it's fine. I can deal with this. I'm Magnus the Red. I am the greatest psyker that I know outside of my own father. I can certainly handle this. And Magnus was wrong about that. He was very wrong.
Wasn't it also in the book that he felt that he could trick the demon?
Yeah. He thought he was smarter than... Magnus believes he is the smartest man in every room. He's often right, but he's not always right.
Yeah.
So, yes, good super chat. Thank you, friend and trader. Yeah, it's important to remember here. Magnus is a smart man, but he's not a wise man.
High intelligence, low wisdom.
Yeah, very good way to put it. So we've talked about what the webway is. The webway project, this is also called the Great Work, quote unquote. It's the Emperor's most ambitious undertaking. And its destruction is arguably the true catastrophe of the Horus Heresy.
Yeah, so it is theorized, mind you, but sort of written into the book, that the Emperor planned to do the heresy at some point to wipe out half his sons. Or if not, damn near all of the Space Marines. But he didn't plan for, all 4 Chaos Gods unifying and fighting him. That was not part of his great plan. He didn't see that coming, Keep in mind, this is only a being that knows every possible future.
And is profoundly flawed. Let's remember this. The Emperor is not a good guy. He's very strong in certain things, but he is absolutely terrible at other things.
This is why Magnus takes right after him.
In a lot of ways, yes. So during the Unification Wars on Terra, the Emperor had discovered an ancient webway portal buried deep under the Terran continent of Asia. This is the future site of the Imperial Palace. Now, the Emperor recognized... Yeah, the Himalayan, well, they call them Himalaysian, but yes, Himalaysian mountains. The Emperor recognized that this webway portal, he knew what it was. And he conceived a plan of breathtaking scope. He wanted to modify the device that they found there called the Golden Throne into a psychic amplification device that was capable of expanding and routing that portal into a vast human-controlled webway network. The project was classified above virtually everything else. The Primarchs didn't even know it existed. I mean, I argue that probably he told Dorn. Or at least Dorn suspected.
Maybe even Lion.
Possibly Lion. Yeah, Lion and Dorn seem like the two most likely to know about it. Nestor Vitumber is going to come in and say Conrad knew about it because he saw it in his visions. That's probably also true.
Well, that would... Okay, hold on. Because you said the Emperor told them. Conrad would not have been told. He would have figured it out through psychic powers. Completely different.
This is why I'm thinking that if the Emperor told anybody, he would have told the Lion.
Yeah,
And
because the Lion is all about secrets.
Right, and I think Dorn would have figured it out, just because he was in charge of the defenses of Terra. But that's really it. Like I don't expect anyone else would have known about it. No. Anyway, so when the Emperor left the front lines of the Crusade to go back to Terra and work on this project, it seemed inexplicable to Horus and the other Primarchs. They were all like, "Why is he doing this? This is crazy. He's abandoning us." The Emperor's plan, insofar as we understand it, because again, this is a lot of conjecture and a lot of speculation, so giant grain of salt, there you go. But what we believe we know about the Emperor's plan is that he wanted three things. He wanted to eliminate warp travel dependency. With the webway, humanity could just move between worlds instantly. They wouldn't risk demonic possession or warp storms. They wouldn't need navigators anymore. The second thing he wanted is he wanted to eliminate dependency on astrotelepathy. Communication between systems would be... So right now, so in all of the Horus Heresy and into Warhammer 40,000, interstellar communication is done through astrotelepathy. Basically, you have an astropath on one planet. He sends a message to an astropath on another planet, but it is very awkward, and a lot of the transmission is metaphorical, so you have to kind of interpret it at the end. Like the message that's sent isn't always the message that's received.
Yeah, I think Belisarius Call is currently working on something different to send it through. Like he made long distance Wi-Fi is what he did. Like that's right. The joke of it, and he sends it between certain points, and then it eventually gets to its target. More complete, but a lot slower.
So if the Webway project had succeeded, communication between systems would no longer require this relay through the Immaterium. And it would remove the risk of demonic corruption of messages, because any message sent through the warp has a chance, it's possible that could be intercepted or tampered with. Lastly, the third thing we believe is that he wanted to starve the Chaos Gods. By insulating humanity from the warp, the primary source of psychic energy feeding the ruinous powers would be cut off. And with this potentially would weaken them over many millennia until they were no longer as great a threat as they once had been.
Or if he could just walk into their domain and destroy them.
Now, some people say, and there are theories to support this. Some people say that, and there's hints scattered throughout the books, that the Emperor's plan was even grander than this. That what he really wanted was a webway to insulate humanity's psyker population from chaos, to let them develop safely, shielded from demonic predation, and then guide the entire species towards becoming a stable psychic civilization rather than what we got. Now, that seems interesting. Like, I like that, and it's a little benevolent for the Emperor. That's like a very...
Yeah, that's weird for the Emperor.
It's a little out of character for him being quite so benevolent, but it's an interesting topic nonetheless. Got another super chat from Kurenshima, actually. Thank you, Kurenshima. He says, what if Eldar allies with the Imperium and defends the webway?
That would imply that both the Imperium and the Eldar could get over themselves to trust the other.
Yeah, and this was a very difficult time for the Eldar to do that, because it's only, at the point we're talking about, it's only been a couple of centuries since... It's only been like 250 years, I think, since the fall of the Eldar. They're still reeling from their entire civilization being destroyed.
There's Victor. He exists.
It's true. All right. So that is kind of what the Webway project was. He kept this project hidden because it required the full psychic power of the Emperor to modify the Golden Throne, to maintain the stability of the tunnel network. The wards that held the Webway corridor sealed against demonic intrusion were extraordinarily delicate. And a single breach could flood the whole thing, and this is again something that was only partially constructed, with entities from the warp, and anyone trying to hold that breach shut would require an immense amount of psychic power to basically plug that hole. Okay. And this is exactly what happened when Magnus performed his sorceress projection to Terra to say, hey, Dad, Horus is turning against you. And when he shows up, this ritual tears through the psychic wards like paper. Demons pour into the webway tunnels. The Emperor, with no other option, is forced to physically put himself on the Golden Throne to seal the breach with his own psychic might. And this requires years of combat by the Sisters of Silence and the Custodes. By the way, there were a bunch of Mechanicum guys down there working on it too, and they're all dead.
There was Mechanicum. There were some just regular dudes.
Yeah.
There were Titan legions.
So the project that had been centuries in the making was rendered irretrievably broken in a single instant. The Golden Throne, which was designed as a tool to build humanity's future, instead became a life support machine for a slowly dying god, that being the Emperor. So now we've set the stage. We kind of know who people were and what happened. So now we get to understand this alternate timeline that we're building. We first have to talk a little bit about the Council of Nicaea. The Council of Nicaea was a meeting between the Emperor and many of the most important people in the Imperium and most of the Primarchs. And the end result was a decree by the Emperor banning the use of psychic powers within the Space Marine legions, dissolving the Librarius, which is where all the Space Marine librarians, who are the Psychers, that was the organization that oversaw them. Magnus was the primary proponent against the ban of psychic powers. Some people characterize the Council of Nicaea as the trial of Magnus the Red. Okay. The Emperor ruled against Magnus, partially to placate anti-Psyker Primarchs like Layman Russ and Mortarion, and partially because the Thousand Sons they were getting really close to some things the Emperor was not happy about. Like their powers were being used so greatly and so undisciplined, in such an undisciplined manner, that the Emperor was like, yeah, this is not good. We don't want this.
In one of the Abaddon books, I think it's the Talon of Horus, the Abaddon book. What is his name? Iskandar Kion talks about how there were literal demons walking on Prospero, just disguised as familiars.
Yes,
tutelaries. And all of them were just totally okay with it. And he's watching his brothers mutate like crazy. And he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna leave.
The demons were on Prospero disguised as beings called tutelaries, who were acted like familiars. There was in fact a demon at the Council of Nicaea, although that's a whole separate thing.
Well,
anyway,
you gotta say what the demon is.
No, I don't want to get into it. It's a stupid story.
You can't be like, there was a demon. There's not a demon.
Go read. What is it? It's called. I think it's called The Burning of Prospero. It's the Dan Abnett book about the Space Wolves.
It's not the Burning Angel or the Red Angel, is it?
No, it's okay. Dumb, and I don't want to get into it because it's not relevant.
Is it one of those things where you're just like banging your head on a desk, being like, "No"?
Oh my god! All right, I will get to this in a minute, but I want to finish the discussion.
Yep, continue.
So, critically, the Emperor was not hostile to Magnus himself. The edict was a political maneuver. It was not so much a sincere prohibition. It was just more like, hey, I have to make people happy right now. And the Emperor was like, he believed that Magnus would be okay with this because he was still important to the Webway projects. It is commonly believed that the Emperor wanted to put Magnus on the Golden Throne to oversee the Webway project. So that it requires a being of great psychic power. There were only 3 in the Imperium: the Emperor, Malkador, and Magnus. So it's believed that's what Magnus's role was meant to have been. So despite the Edict of Nicaea saying no psychic powers in the legions, Magnus and the Thousand Sons, they continued their occult studies in secret on Prospero. And as part of this, Magnus witnessed a vision of Horus falling to chaos on a planet called Davin. And at first, Magnus is like, no, Horus, and he tries to like pull him back, but it doesn't work. So realizing that Horus is irredeemably lost, Magnus is like, we have to warn the Emperor. And he performs this massive sacrifice-fueled ritual to project his soul directly to Terra, rather than using the slower, more conventional astropathic network or sending someone on a ship. He astrally projected there through this sorceress ritual. The result is catastrophic. His sorcery obliterates the psychic wards, tears open warp rifts within the webway tunnels, unleashes a demonic flood the Emperor was forced to personally contain. And furthermore, Magnus's guilt at all of this was so overwhelming that by the time he'd made his way through, he couldn't even bring himself to deliver the warning well. It kind of just stammered out of him at best.
There's a really, really funny TikTok about this, and I feel like this is completely relevant right now because it's exactly what we're talking about.
Okay.
Am I, man? I'm gonna be evil. I'm gonna be a bad boy. Horus! Horus! I'm gonna betray everything that we stand for. What are you doing? I gotta call Dad! Daddy, come on! I must use my psychic power! Dad, Horus is gonna betray you! No, what the fuck?
I mean... Yeah, it's kind of like that, yeah. The Emperor was enraged, not just because the Nicaea Edict had been violated, but because of the catastrophic and irreplaceable destruction of his grand design, the one thing he really cared about, and the Magnus came in and smashed it. So the Emperor is so mad, he orders Leman Russ to take his legion to Prospero and essentially arrest Magnus. It was it's a little more complicated than that. Like the exact order was to bring Magnus back to Terra to present himself and explain in front of the Emperor just what the hell had happened. However, Horus, who was already deep in Chaos's embrace, he intercepted those orders and he uses his words to twist Leman Russ's heart and basically convinces Russ to kill Magnus rather than capture him. So this begins a thing called the Burning of Prospero, which is a massive battle between the Space Wolves Legion, along with a bunch of other forces, and the Thousand Sons on Prospero. Racked by the flesh change mutation and utterly demoralized by the fact that they were being singled out like this, their legion was just shattered. And Magnus, who was broken and betrayed, made another bargain with Tzeentch.
What?
I know. And in the moment where his back was broken over Leman Russ's knee, Magnus and the Thousand Sons were teleported away from Prospero to a place called Sortarius, which is the sorcerer's world. And they stayed there more or less ever since. And this ended the Imperium's greatest psychic asset, the most well-intentioned architect of his own ruin, Magnus the Red. So that's what happened. And it only took us an hour to talk about, to get through all of that. So now the divergence point. What if Magnus the Red obeyed the Emperor?
They lived happily ever after at the end. I'm joking.
So there's two main possibilities that I want to bring up here. One is Magnus obeys the edict completely. He abides by the council's decision, ceases all sorceress or psychic practices, does not peer into the warp, does not observe Horus's fall, issues no warning whatsoever because there isn't anything to warn about, and he's that's it. That's option one. Option two is that he does still like practice sorcery, and he still sees the vision and the warp of Horus turning to chaos, but instead of sending himself psychically to Terra, he uses some other channel to warn the Emperor of the Horus's betrayal. A channel that very importantly does not destroy the Webway project.
I got one for you. I'm throwing my money on this one. So, Magnus sees the future. Ooh, future sight. It's a pretty good Pokemon move. Anyway, Magnus decides, okay, he sees the future. He knows what Horus is about to do. He knows that Horus might actually send the executioner after him. That's Lehman Russ for everybody. He instead goes to his brother Fulgrim with his own vision and convinces Fulgrim to fire upon Horus, destroying his fleet. When Fulgrim jumped out of the warp, and the Phoenician had the perfect chance to completely blindside Horus and destroy him when they met. This is actually in, I think it's in either the Palatine Phoenix or just Fulgrim. When Fulgrim actually does this, he has the Lair Blade. He hasn't fully committed to it yet. And the Lair Blade is actually being like, hey, do it, kill him, do it, kill him. It would have been absolutely amazing if Magnus just appeared in like some random form to Fulgrim and was just like, no, seriously, do it.
So you like option two, where he finds another way to get the message across.
I always love the way of, because I really like it because it's him doing something still absolutely diabolically evil, but with the best possible outcome. Because in doing that, Fulgrim might drop the Lair Blade.
Well, I think option one is the boring option here. Option one, saying he just sits at home and does nothing, is technically right, but also very, very boring. It just kind of he just kind of removes himself from the Heresy entirely.
Oh, the chat is asking if they could vote on this.
Spyfoot, a further option: Galactic Fishman invasion. All right. Okay. I can put up a poll. Give me a moment here. Alexis, please distract them with something while I go set up this poll.
All right, fair enough. So one of the biggest tragedies of the Horus Heresy is the fall of Fulgrim. And I love the idea of redeeming fallen Primarchs. And I think by doing a diabolical act, one can be redeemed. A Primarch that I think is actually irredeemable is Lehman Russ for what he's done potentially, where he executed a brother, maybe. We don't know that to be exactly true, but it's heavily theorized that, yes, he killed one of his own brothers. But I love the idea that Magnus has to do something absolutely ruinous in order to save the Imperium that he actually cares about. So unlike the Emperor, who doesn't care about the Imperium, he only cares about humanity. He will change it up any way he needs to keep it going. But Magnus actually cares about the people. So I could see him skewing certain things, sending certain people after certain, like causing certain events to happen in different patterns where it most benefits the Imperium. So instead of having something like the Horus Heresy, now you have an absolutely blitzed Horus who is completely, his fleet is just gone at this point. The Sons of Horus are reeling, they're running away. The Phoenician drops the Lair Blade, and is just like, I can't believe I did this. Winds up getting killed by, say, Erebus, because Erebus is all like, you foiling my plans? I see you foiling my plans. You're foiling my plans. And he takes him out because he wanted him to be corrupted. Angron gets involved because it's a fight, of course. And instead of the actual Horus Heresy being this massive heresy against the Imperium, It's now a massive fight of brother v brother, where as they invade each other's spaces, they start getting involved. And you have like the unified versions of like Sanguinius Gilliman and Dark and Lion going up against the unionized version of like what's left of Horus's fleet, the Iron Warriors, because I believe they would fall no matter what. The Pro Turbo is just way too lost. I could definitely see it where, like, because I love the brother v brother fights of the Heresy and how personal they are. Another option is they could have just called their mom. Like, Erda's right there. They could just call her and be like, Mom, I need some counseling.
It's unclear whether they were ever aware of Erda. Let's put it that way.
Erebus knew about her.
We have a super chat from Super Orlock. He says, either way, this means the gods are going to be very focused on breaking that fracking chair. This probably means secrecy might be even more important. Good point.
That is actually very important.
Kurenshima says, technically, Fulgrim killed two brothers. No, he got a kill and he got a TKO. He got a kill on Ferris Manus for sure.
Yep. And
he TKO'd Rabute Gilliman. In a very technical sense, you could claim that he did kill Gilliman, but that's on the very fringe of technically correct. So I'm going to say I would categorize it more as a kill and a TKO, which does make Fulgrim the most dangerous Primarch to the other Primarchs. Interesting.
If you want to get really technical, your brain got the kill there.
That's why I said it's like super technical to say that Fulgrim killed Gilliman.
It's a kill and a kill assist.
That's why I said TKO, because it's effectively out of the picture. And we got a super chat from Biofoot. It says, Alexis, I'm in for that brother on brother action. Woo! All right, let's see what chat has to say about the poll. All right, the answer is, they want to hear about the second option, about the where he finds another way to warn the Emperor.
I do have one that's pretty funny for the first one. I just want to mention it really quickly. It just pans over to Magnus like nothing ever happened. The Webway project is complete. He's just sitting there with a tub of ice cream like, man.
So, option one is that Magnus basically just pulls away from the whole thing, because if he does not use his sorcerer's abilities, he essentially remains ignorant of the heresy until Horus wanted him out of the picture, because Horus would absolutely want the Thousand Sons out of the picture. They are the strongest anti-demon force that the Imperium has, which is one of the reasons why they wanted to bomb in the first place. Mm-hmm. So I think as somebody pointed out, the Eternal Crusader pointed out that the Burning of Prospero would almost certainly still happen, just with different teams.
Yeah, I could definitely see the Word Bearers doing it. Although, would they have the strength to do it? Like, they have the numerical advantage.
Well,
but
we're very far out on the speculation limb here, because all right, so if we're assuming option one, and I want to be clear, this is not where chat wants us to talk about. But if we are assuming option one, then Magnus has forsaken all of his psychic gifts. He's not going to foresee anything. So the Word Bearers would show up in orbit. Hey, brother, we're here to visit. Great. Roll out the welcome mat, says Magnus. Here comes all these drop pods and dreadnoughts and demons and possessed marines, and he's like, oops. And so the Word Bearers,
demons.
The Word Bearers would have the advantage of surprise in that situation. And I mean, an entire legion against an entire legion, it was almost easy for the Space Wolves to take down the Thousand Sons. So I think the Word Bearers could have done it.
I think the Sisters of Silence did a lot of heavy lifting.
Oh, they did. They did. I agree. I agree. That is one of the reasons why it was easy for the Space Wolves. But the Word Bearers would have been able to, I think.
I think the Word Bearers would have also taken advantage of the innate corruption within them to force them to transform. They would have found a spell or something to do it.
Probably. There's ways. Anyway, so but chat does not want us to talk about option 1. I just wanted to make it clear what option 1 was.
Mm-hmm.
Option 2, Magnus forgoes the ritual, does not blow up the Webway project, still finds a way to warn the Emperor about Horus, but it's done in very differently.
He tells the lion.
Well, I mean, one thought that occurred to me is that he could have possibly reached out to Malkador.
Yes, Malkador or Dorn.
Or Dorn. He could have reached out to either one of them as a possibility, and either one of them would have been able to convince the Emperor that, yeah, we need to do something about this without blowing up the Webway. So that's my thinking on is that he might have reached out to one of those two. Who do you think? So let's talk about the method, and then we'll talk about the recipient. What method do you think he would use, Alexis? How would Magnus go about it?
So, okay, my brain wants to say, and I'm thinking like a schemer. So, okay, he would try to reach out to a person that Chaos has. Okay, at this point, I'm assuming that Magnus has figured out that Chaos is bad. Okay, that something is trying to manipulate him to do this, and his father clearly knows best. So he is trying his hardest to prevent anything from happening. So he would want to try conventional means, but he knows that that's too slow. He would want to reach out to somebody that is protected against Chaos, who is also very, very trusted. He can't go to Horus. Horus would be the first choice, but he knows that Horus is being corrupted.
Mm-hmm.
There are two perfect options for this. And it's got to be either Sanguinius, like the perfect son, or it has to be the lion.
Well, Dorn is right there on Terra, and the Emperor trusts Dorn. So
while I believe that, I think that Dorn isn't. How to put this? I don't want to say Dorn is dumb.
He is. No, the Dorn is very focused. Dorn is very focused.
I think Dorn wouldn't be able to see through what Tzeentch would do to his message.
So what about Malkador, who's also on Terra?
There's the possibility that it still destroys the Webway.
If Malkador was with the Emperor, yeah, okay, good point.
Yeah, so he could target Constantine Valdor. Is a good choice. He could also target
Valdor was probably with the Emperor, though. I mean,
yeah, that's the
Valdor and Malkador have the same problem. They're almost always with the Emperor.
Yep, so they can't target them. I think he would try to target Sanguinius. Sanguinius would have an aneurysm because psychic powers are involved. And Sanguinius is like written to be like, well, he always has problems with his psychic powers.
But he's also very psychically talented.
Yes. So there is a very, very, very good chance that Sanguinius would be able to see through the lies that Tzeentch is saying and then warn his father. But there is somebody that was heading to Terra around that time, and that is the Lion, who then was intercepted by Perturabo when he exchanged the bombs, and then he had to fly back to his home world. If he talked to Lion, I think he was on the way back at this point. I could have the time period mixed up, so please forgive me if I get the time periods mixed up. But I think the best choice would be the Lion, because the Lion is so secretive. He also has the Hexagrammaton to protect him from interference from warp taint. He also knows, like, hands down, the Lion is the only Primarch that knows how to combat chaos demons.
Okay, it's important to point out one thing right now. The Hexagrammaton is not psychic warding. Hexagrammic wards are.
Yeah, well,
they're similar, but they're very well. He had the Hexagrammaton, which is not the same thing. I just want to be really clear. The Hexagrammaton is a structure of, it's an organization within the Dark Angels. It has nothing to do with protecting people from psychic abilities.
In all fairness, he has a whole race that protects him from psychic interference.
The Watchers of the Dark.
The Watchers.
Sure, I guess we can go with that, but I wanted to be clear. So we did have a comment here that's actually really interesting based on this, which was, Yeah, Christina Question says, can you imagine the lion taking it upon himself to kill Horus to prove that he was the more worthy war master? I absolutely can.
Yes. But
150%.
the problem with that would be like you would have the unified Dark Angel fleet without them getting the. So, one of the things, and you know this, Ross, you know this all too well. The lion will kill anything the Emperor tells him to kill. He won't hesitate. He won't hold back. And the only reason he ever held back is because Sanguinius and Gilliman told him to. And it took both of them to try to convince him to hold back. And it took Gillimam to convince him.
So I did look into this. When Magnus projected back to Terra, Lion and the Dark Angels, they were tied up in a prolonged military campaign against the Gordian League, which was a separatist faction resisting imperial compliance. It was a pretty inglorious and attritional conflict, and it was nowhere near the central dramas of the Heresy. The Lion wouldn't have even found out about Horus's treachery until a year later during from the Istvan III atrocity.
Oh my God, that's even better.
So the Lion, this would bring the Lion into the Heresy a lot earlier than he canonically does.
Which we both know that one of the legions, the legion that he feared the most, was the Dark Angels.
Who feared the most?
Horus. He wanted them as far away as possible.
Right, because
he put in multiple barricades against the Dark Angels because he knew if the Dark Angels and the Ultramarines, but more specifically the Dark Angels, got to him, he would not be able to siege Terra.
So this warning the Lion would be an interesting move. However, I would argue that I would argue this is ultimately futile as far as warning the Emperor. It's a good idea. It's a good idea. I think it's absolutely a great idea. However, I don't think it would change too much because Chaos was very invested in making sure that the Dark Angels were not around either. And there were things like the Ruin Storm that they put on Ultramar that also screwed up the Dark Angels. So the Chaos would probably intervene to make sure that this didn't screw things up more. But warning the Lion does make a lot of sense. And I think that would be a very valid option for Magnus to do. It'd be like, yo, Lion, here's what's going on.
If not the Lion, I think it has to be Fulgrim. As weird as it is to say, Fulgrim, in his book, commented that he could have killed Horus right then and there when they were meeting right before they were about to bombard the, Istvan? Fulgrim shows up and his fleet completely comes in at an angle that he could bring his cannons around and absolutely demolish his entire fleet, and there would be no way for Horus to defend himself. He would have to flee.
Yeah, that was Fulgrim showing off for sure.
Yeah,
but here's the thing: if you warn Fulgrim, the Lair Blade goes off early. Like I said, I don't think that Chaos would allow this to happen. I think the Lair Blade would go off early. And be like, oh, you learned something that you weren't supposed to learn. Well, too bad. You're no longer Fulgrim. You're now Demon Fulgrim.
Yes. Now, there is the chance that, because he didn't have the Lair Blade in his hand at the time. It was still talking to him, but he didn't have it in his hand at the time. It was only after Lucius brought it to him that he decided not to fire upon Horus. It would be really cool if Magnus went to him and was just like, kill your brother.
I think you brought this matchup a lot.
I want it so badly.
Ricardo Andre points out that the Lion is in the Eastern Fringe. Psychic projection communication is possible, but the Legion is not close. Yeah, I agree with this. The Lion is not liked by most brothers, and I think Magnus's bias would show here. We are giving Magnus a lot of knowledge that he wouldn't necessarily have in this particular idea. So that's a good point. And Ricardo also points out Magnus tries to consult Conrad. Ricardo Andre is Conrad Kurtz's biggest fan. I just want to put that out to anybody who doesn't know this guy. He's great. I love Ricardo Andre. Magnus tries to consult Conrad, he says, because Magnus knows of Conrad's visions. Does he? Interesting. And even gave him an orb to help him with his visions. Perhaps he'd seek counsel between the seers. Interesting. Okay. First of all, not aware that they had he'd given him an orb and that he knew about the visions. So that's curious. Would Magnus reach out to Conrad? Do you think, Alexis?
No, I don't even think the thought would cross his mind.
Well, if it did cross his mind, here's my counter argument to Nestor Vizumbra. Even if he did reach out to Conrad, who's Conrad going to tell? And crucially, who's going to believe Conrad?
Also, there is a comment here. Excuse me.
IceFans88 says, Fulgrim loved Horus too much, I believe, to kill him at the time.
It takes the Lair Blade to stop him. Like, he really thinks about it. He actually contemplates the entire battle in his head. And he's like, I could do this. I could destroy him. I could end this right now. I could kill him. And it's not just him saying this. The demons talking to him are like, you totally could. I just imagine if he had more cheering idiots in his head, he might go through with it.
Nestor Vizumbra points out that he was asking Conrad for counsel, not necessarily to put things into action. Yeah, but if he's not putting anything into action, what's the point of discussing it? I guess I mean, you're fair point. I'm not sure how it doesn't seem relevant if he's just asking for advice. So I don't know.
Who's your completely out of left field pick after this one?
Yeah, I wanted to get to the super chat. Yep. Tamusan, first time. Hey, Tamusan, welcome. Thank you so much for the super chat. Could he do a multi-message to brothers he trusts? The ritual
Discord server.
The ritual that he used to send his consciousness to Terra was a big deal, and it cost a great deal of sacrifice from his legion and the people of Prospero. I don't see him doing it more than once, and I don't think Magnus would want to risk trying to reach multiple people at once. I don't think even Magnus would think he was that good. What do you think, Alexis?
No. Okay. So my reasoning isn't that it's based on Magnus. I think it's based on how the story was told, how he sent out the message. It would diminish the sacrifice that it took if he could just do it to multiple people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think there's a party line available for that kind of sorcery.
I said a Discord server.
Yeah, Discord server. That's the more up to date one. So left field pick. You asked me, like, who would Magnus reach out to? That would be a left field pick.
Like, this is 0.001% chance that it might work.
The Khan.
Okay. All right. Let's hear it.
The Khan is an out of left field pick because he is the most enigmatic. He's like the most mysterious of the Primarchs.
Yeah.
But I could see Magnus gambling on that, meaning that he wasn't yet part of Horus's council. And the Khan would probably have the capability to get to Terra and get to the Emperor and convince him.
Okay, I like
so
that.
I think the Khan checks a lot of boxes and is also a left field pick. That's my feeling.
My completely out there pick, and this is based on very, very little hopes and prayers. I have two. The first one, Mortarion.
Oh no, God no.
Oh
no, that he would never want to do that.
I know it's completely 0.001% chance it works.
That is like the least optimal approach. Pick the guy who hates sorcery the most. Oh my God, no, I don't think so.
Okay, but hear me out. he tells, so he has a vision of the future. Okay. He can see the future, you know.
Space magic.
Yeah, space magic solves a lot of problems, except for daddy issues. But what he does is he knows that so at the point of corruption, Mortarion has sworn his forces to Horus, right? Or is that
Well, Mortarion, at the time of the, are you talking about at the time of the transmission?
when he's going to, yeah,
Okay.
at the time of the transmission, is he corrupted at that time? That's what this whole thing depends on.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think he's sworn his
No,
forces
he was.
to-
No, he was. Yeah, he had already changed. He was already gone. Yeah, Mortarion
Okay,
was
never
already
mind. Never
gone.
mind. All right, not him then. Because my thought was he would tell him, and then he would take the trip to Terra, and I imagine that Nurgle would act at that exact point to turn his entire legion into the Plague Legion, but he would sacrifice himself to give that last message to the Emperor.
Okay, so to be really clear, there's actually two corruptions of the Death Guard.
Yeah.
Okay, there's the first corruption is when Mortarion swears loyalty to Horus, but that happens before Nurgle gets involved.
Yeah.
So at the time that Magnus was transporting himself to Terra, Mortarion had already sworn his legion to Horus, but they had not yet become controlled by Nurgle.
Okay. So then
So
that idea
to be
doesn't work.
clear, there are two separate incidences of corruption, and that we're in between them at the time that this happens.
Okay, so not that one. The next one is, I don't know if he knows he exists, because no two books have ever said that they've met each other.
Eldred, Elthran.
Eldred.
I knew it. I knew it because when you asked me, I was like, "Well, could he talk to Eldred?" I'm like, "I don't think he knew. I don't think he even knew about Eldred."
Because Eldred can get to Terra.
Yeah, because of the webway.
Yes, then Eldred could talk to, well, a few of the Perpetuals who are still left, including Erda, and including the Emperor and Malkador, and could actually just talk to them. That's one of the big things. Because once Eldred gets close enough to the Emperor will just simply just read his mind and be like, okay, hang on, let him through.
Super Arlock, thank you for the super chat. He points out that Perturabo probably doesn't know. Sorry, that Magnus likes Perturabo and probably doesn't know that Perturabo has joined with Horus. I mean, interesting. But Perturabo, I mean, this is the same issue as the Lion. Like he'll never get there in time.
Yeah.
So
same with Gilliman can't make it there in time.
I mean, arguably, Sanguinius is too far away too.
Yeah.
That's like why I tried talking about Dorn and all these other stuff. But
at best, if you told any of the three triads, they would just form Imperial Secundus quicker, and maybe make it a buffer zone for like refugees and the like, and where they can storm and attack against Horus's forces.
So Ricardo Andre says, how to convince Mortarion to trust the visions. Conrad has them, and Mortarion and Conrad are said to be friends. So is he going to be a bitch learning Conrad is also in it? It's a lie. Well, again, at this point, Mortarion had already sworn his loyalty to Horus. Also, at this point, Conrad was doing horrible, awful atrocities and was already marked for destruction by the High Lords of Terra. So again, who's going to listen to Conrad? That's my question there. Anyway, let's talk about a couple things that do change if in this circumstance. First of all, and the most important one, is that the Imperial Webway project survives.
No, he doesn't exist yet. Never mind.
Who?
I was thinking Nathaniel Garrow.
No, he's a loyal son of Horus up until the Isstvan 3 drop site.
So he's
atrocity, not the massacre, the atrocity.
Yep.
So the Webway project survives if Magnus doesn't do this. And this is the biggest consequential change, because if the Webway project is still around, then it gives humanity a future. It gives humanity something to do where they will be more or less isolated from chaos, and that's big. This is the Emperor's contingency plan. And eventually, Magnus was meant to sit on that throne, according to the story theory of Magnus. And Magnus would then explore the webway in his incorporeal form, guiding humanity, keeping that project running. Without that warning screwing everything up, the Emperor may not have had to sacrifice himself at all.
And he would have his 10,000 and all of the Silent Sisters
with him at the Siege of Terra, which would change the Siege of Terra considerably.
Which also means that he could have probably brought his Golden Girls up to the flagship of Horus and thus not get corrupted by chaos and destroyed Horus's flagship.
Right.
Which would also have destroyed any chance of Abaddon affecting the future, which is really funny.
The Webway project surviving entirely unencumbers the Emperor during his conflict with Horus aboard the Vengeful Spirit. So the Siege of Terra would end in a far more positive way for the Emperor specifically.
Mm-hmm.
That would change a great deal there too. Also, Istvan 5 and the Dropsite Massacre would possibly change, because if Magnus manages to send his warning another way, okay, either in person on board a ship or using astrotelepathy, then the warning arrives earlier, more clearly, without any distraction, demonic catastrophes unfolding underneath the Imperial Palace. So the Burning of Prospero is the moment where this is where the Emperor kind of says, okay, Horus is definitely, something's wrong with him, because the Burning Prospero was never meant to happen. It was just supposed to be an arrest. Okay.
Random question, because this just crossed my mind. Leman Russ never faced consequences for this, did he?
No, because the heresy happened.
Yeah.
And by the time the heresy was over, there was nobody around to say, hey, Leman Russ, what the hell were you doing there, buddy? Except for Constantine Valdor, and he didn't have and Leman Russ didn't have to listen to him. You're not my boss. You're not my dad.
So Leman Russ, the executioner, fails to kill 2 Primarchs and gets away scot-free.
Who was the other one he's failed to kill? Horus, I guess?
Yeah, stabbed the spear of the Emperor, or whatever that the spear is called, into Horus and doesn't kill him because he's too sympathetic.
Anyway, so if there is if there's a warning that Magnus manages to send, and the Burning Prospero doesn't happen, that does change how the Dropsite Massacre on Istvan 5 occurs. There could be, the Emperor would have clear and unimpeachable intelligence about what the traitor legions were going to do.
Oh my god! And he's sending the executioner, and he's sending Lion.
And Horus's plan post Istvan required a lot of uncertainty and confusion in order to succeed. So there's a lot that would change there too. And we got a couple super chats. We got one from Elemental Exposure, sung to the tune of that 90s McDonald's commercial. Do you have some magic and you've done nothing wrong? Well, that's too friggin' bad, because now your planet's gone.
I love it.
That's wonderful. Good one, Elemental Exposure. I hope I was somewhere close to being on tape. Ice Vein says, I have to go. Work calls. Thanks for the stream. Still, thank you, buddy. Ice Veins, you're a real one. We like you a lot, buddy. Appreciate you. All right. Siege of Terra, as we said, would be drastically different, because the Emperor is not weakened. He's not bound to the Golden Throne. The Custodians and the Sisters of Silence, they spent the bulk of the heresy fighting this secret grinding war against demons in the Webway tunnels. So instead, they're available to defend the palace walls or to go with them onto the Vengeful Spirit. The estimates of deaths from the Mechanicum and the Custodes in the Webway tunnels are immense. They are extreme.
What is
they are
enormous.
enormous.
Isn't he down to like 3,000 Custodes at the end of the
There were far fewer. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. There were
Yeah.
multiple warlords that were destroyed. Tons and tons of warhounds. It was insane. Also, I just realized something. You know how Mortarians what are they Titan Legion. What is the Death Guard's Titan Legion called? Not the Death Guard, but the Nurglified House Mortis. House
okay.
Mortis. House Mortis walked upon Terra and nothing stood in their path. This means the Emperor would know that that's coming and activate House Sinister prior to them landing.
Right, the Psi Titans.
Yes,
the Psi Titans are scary as hell.
Which means he would have been able to combat them immediately.
Also, those were deployed to Prospero for Prospero
Mhm.
burns. Ricardo Andre points out, he says, let's not make the most probable story. Let's make a unique story. Okay. I mean, I'm going to say it out loud if it's just very unlikely. Just that's my nature. I'm going to say it. But you got a good point there.
So. The Webway project needs to be destroyed in order for the heresy to happen. Let's say that Magnus he gets his message there, right? We're going to say like a few years have to have passed for him to get the message there in more conventional means. Even if he sent it straight to Dorn and Dorn then sent it to the Emperor, it would have to be deciphered at that point because Dorn's not doing that. He's not too big into that. He's just going to hand him a letter and be like, "Here you go, boss." I think that it's going to be up to certain demons and certain super powerful entities to destroy the Golden Throne, the Webway project at that point. It might be that whatever the deal for that eye was has to be fulfilled at this point. Maybe they still use Magnus as a focal point to summon themselves in. Kind of like how Samus summoned himself in, or how Be'lakor appeared, because Be'lakor appeared during the Heresy for some reason. He was never in a Heresy book, but he was in a short story. You have things like, you can't have the Huntress, but it would be cool to see Shalaxi appear, but a Runestorm version of her. Because you still have the unified chaos behind it, but now they might go through somebody else like Erebus.
So Lichler Kears asked an interesting question. He says, does Mars still descend into an extended civil war? This is a very interesting question.
Oh.
See, Kelbor Hall was the fabricator of Mars, and Kelbor Hall he defected to Horus partially because of the early heresy and the fact that the Emperor had put a lot of restrictions on the Mechanicum that he chafed against. But it was also the fact that the Emperor was distracted by the Webway crisis that caused Kelbor Hall to be like, yeah, we're breaking our allegiance with the Imperium. So having the Webway project still functioning, in which the Mechanicum is heavily invested, as both construction and research, frankly, that represents a pretty powerful loyalty anchor for Mars. I'm not going to say Kelbor Hall wouldn't still break his word, because Horus was a very, very good speaker, and Kelbor Hall was very, very unhappy. I would say, in my personal opinion, it still happens, but it happens later. It doesn't happen at the time that it did in the Heresy. It would be closer to the Siege of Terra.
Okay.
That's what I think. Now,
so this means that a Siege of Terra needs to happen.
But because I've been admonished to not talk about what's most likely, but instead talk about the unique idea. The unique idea here is that a loyal Mechanicum throughout the Heresy, that's huge. That's enormous. That means Horus never gains access to the Martian war machines. He never gains. He has a massive supply issue problem and repair problem. And all the Ordinatus weapons and the technology that the traitor half of the Mechanicum provided. It's a staggering military shift, and almost I mean, if Magnus's ritual were to result in that, like the fact that he didn't use the ritual, resulted in the mechanic of staying loyal, that's a fucking tectonic shift. That changes everything.
At that point, I don't think Horus like does the heresy.
No, he probably doesn't. He's probably like, you know what? This was bad idea. Let's try this again later.
Let's retreat to the Eye of Terror and come back in 10,000 years and hope for the best.
Similarly, the word bearers, they were the architects of the whole heresy, because Erebus and Lorgar, they were the ones who originally corrupted Horus, more Erebus than anybody else. Screw you, Erebus. They were the ones who seeded chaos worship across the galaxy. They designed the rituals that powered the Traitors campaign. In the normal timeline, the word bearers used the confusion of multiple simultaneous catastrophes to operate freely. But in this timeline, the Emperor, who has early warning and still has Magnus on his side, could potentially perceive the taint of Lorgar's chaos corruption, or more likely Erebus's chaos corruption, and the chaos corruption throughout the word bearers before it fully manifests. And this might turn the heresy more into a targeted decapitation of the word bearers rather than a galaxy-wide conflagration. The entire war might be more shorter, more surgical. If the Emperor had a psychic son capable of sniffing out the source of the corruption, wow, big change.
So the only way that I could see Magnus not being able to do it is you would have to get somebody like the Blue Scribe or the Changeling involved to protect Horus. You would need somebody of that magnitude to absolutely shield Horus from being seen. But then, of course, there's the whole, can the lion walk through the forest and find him anyway? But there is one character I think we are overlooking, and that is Abaddon's sword. Oh my god, why Draknian.
Mm-hmm.
Draknian would now not appear in the webway, and Draknian was huge. Draknian killed thousands. Like, Draknian was so powerful, it was possessing titans and everything and destroying entire like titan fields. Like, the thing was a menace. It also wounded the Emperor, and it's the only time aside from Horus that we've seen the Emperor wounded, to the point where the custodians had to throw themselves at this demon to stop it. So imagine if that demon was guided by Horus. Now you have a demonic force that could be more organized with Perturabo's. Well, you can't lead demons. Unfortunately, that is just a flat out truth. Demons do what demons do. You could only point them at something and hope they go that way. They have their own way of justifying things, but no mortal mind can understand it. But Perturabo could probably use them better than anybody else, because he did during the Siege of Terra. So now you have Lorgar constantly summoning. You would probably have to put the Runestorm maybe above Saturn to Mars. Like, that's how big the Runestorm would have to be to cover those two planets. Mostly so that they have a staging ground to actually get into, Sol and actually force the Martian catastrophe to happen. So that way they could use the Martians to try to fight the Sisters of Silence instead of the demons, because they could have billions of demons, but 100 Sisters of Silence could probably deal with that. These are rough estimates. Don't quote me on that. This is just saying that the Sisters of Silence, we don't know their exact number. We know that there's more than 10,000. That's about it. We
Send
know that
your emails to Norn Queen Alexis at.
Oh my god, yeah. So we have to figure out a way that Horus can still break the Webway project to force the Emperor to stop being on the front lines. That's the big thing. And the only person I think that could do that is a twofold. One, Kalbar Hal. You need him to destroy it. He's going to be the only person who maybe understands it. And two, Arkin Lan. He's the only one crazy enough to destroy. Or maybe Belisarius Caul, since he was active at the time, but he wasn't as crazy at the time. He wasn't as strong. He was just a dude. But those two could possibly have what it takes to destroy the Webway project. If not, you'd have to go to like trying to trick the Emperor, which is never a good idea because he could see through it. And if he can't, Magnus can. And then if there's anything else, Lion can destroy it. So you have 3 really good anti-chaos Primarchs, well, anti-chaos forces that you're dealing with, not including the fucking Psi Titans.
Hear me out. I think there's something we're all missing here. And I think a lot of people have missed this. A completed Imperial Webway would lead to war between the Eldari, all of the Eldari, and the Imperium. Because the Eldar's greatest existential terror, aside from Slaanesh, which is their greatest existential terror, is another species gaining unfettered access and control over the Webway, which they consider their sacred inheritance. A fully operational Imperial Webway, powered and expanded by the Emperor and Magnus, would have been almost certainly triggered some sort of catastrophic conflict with the Eldari, probably starting with the Craft Worlds and ending with the Drukhari, because Cormorag would be like, no, we don't want this either.
I think it would start with the Harlequins.
Probably, but the Craft Worlds would be involved.
Oh yeah. They would
Almost
definitely.
certainly.
They would definitely attack almost immediately
Because the Farseers and the Shadowseers, who are both Harlequin and Craft World, they were already watching the Horus Heresy through the skeins of fate. They would then be forced to choose between letting chaos ascend to new heights or the long-term threat of humanity colonizing the most important part of their remaining culture.
Okay, the one problem that I see with that, the Eldar was still in heavy recovery at this point.
Well, it wouldn't happen right away, but it would happen. It would be inevitable. That's my point. It would be inevitable.
All right, Thanos, chill.
Woo! Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
But I could definitely see, weirdly enough, the one that I think would be the problem first is the Drukhari. Because there's a lot of them. Because they view that as an intrusion. And because it's the perfect opportunity to get within the Golden Throne. Like to get within the Emperor's palace. So I think that there could be a chance that the Dark Eldar attack, which might be enough of a distraction for, well, see, that's the problem. Dark Eldar don't attack in numbers enough to have the Emperor and the Custodians get involved.
They would eventually. Vect would eventually be forced to lead. Well, if it was Vect, we're not even sure at that time. Ricardo Andres, super chat, he says, which is worse, losing the Emperor or Sol itself as a new small eye of terror? He said he drafted a situation from his alternate universe Heresy that leads there, where Pride doomed everyone. Well, Pride doomed everyone in the original Heresy too, so you are correct.
I think losing the Emperor is much worse than losing Sol.
Well, we have an episode on what if the Emperor died, and one of the biggest consequences of the Emperor's death is that interstellar travel becomes extremely difficult and extremely dangerous for all of humanity. Mm-hmm. Anyone who uses the Astronomicon to navigate through the warp, which is the Imperium of Man and everyone associated with it, they would be very, very screwed. So in that case, I think it is worse to lose the Emperor than Sol.
They would just get a bunch of crew to guide their ships.
Right? I mean, so speaking of that, because that is a form of adaptation, right? We're adapting to the situation. I think that Chaos would adapt to a loyal Magnus. I think so. Horus's rebellion succeeded partially because he neutralized every major threat. and that destroying the Thousand Sons removed the Imperium's best sorcerers. The webway breach tied down the Emperor. With Magnus loyal and the webway intact, the ruinous powers would need a new plan. And I think in this scenario, they would try to corrupt Magnus during the heresy. They would probably cause mass flesh change transformations, torture Magnus with this in front, dangling in front of him. There's only one way to save your sons.
So they do what they did to Mortarion to them.
So I think in this alternate timeline, it's not Magnus saves the day, but instead, how long before Chaos finds a new lever against Magnus?
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Okay, I like that. There could also be the whole they corrupted a loyalist legion, like Gilliman's boys get corrupted. Although Gilliman won't let that happen. Like Gilliman comes by with a whole bunch of spikes on. Gilliman takes off her slipper and holds it up. Gilliman just takes it all off. He's like, I'm a good boy, I promise.
So the flesh change is the biggest problem Thousand Sons have to grapple with. And that was almost certainly enabled or aggravated by Tzeentch. Because Tzeentch had designs on Magnus and his legion long before the heresy ever started. Magnus struck some form of bargain with what he calls the primordial annihilator, which is the ruinous powers. He sacrificed his eye, or partially his part of his soul, or possibly his soul. Interpretations can vary, because this is very rare. It's not really very clear. But he did temporarily manage to arrest this uncontrolled mutation of his legion. But in a scenario where Magnus does not turn to chaos, then the flesh change will still continue, because it's still fundamentally a problem in the gene seed. They would still face this threat to their existence, but there is some evidence to suggest that the Webway project offered a solution, because psychers within the Webway were shielded from Chaos's corrupting influence in ways that those outside of the Webway were not. Now, does this mean that the Thousand Sons would not flesh change in the Webway? That is outside of my purview. Like, I don't know. I think, however...
Sorry, I'm going to turn my mic off real quick because my cat is going to dig through the litter box for like 5 seconds.
All right, fair enough. I don't think that it stops him from suffering the flesh change, but I do think it does halt or at least dampen any influence of chaos on the Thousand Sons. It might insulate them a little bit. I guess is what I'm trying to say. But it's still a grim future for the Legion, because without the forbidden knowledge that Magnus and Ahriman accumulated on Prospero, there'd be no rubric of Ahriman to cast, and the Legion would probably just withered away and died over time. Their psychers consumed one by uncontrolled mutation. So it's a melancholy outcome for remaining loyal. However, here's where I think we get some optimism, though. Yes, the Thousand Sons may have withered and died, but you know what Magnus would be amazing at? If he's he can do a lot of things all at once. He could sit on the golden throne, and he could also be the first and greatest Grand Master of the Grey Knights.
Now, see, that I really, really like, because I know Malcador would protect him for that.
Well, I think Malcador would be like really happy to have Magnus help him establish the Grey Knights. And this is the Grey Knights may be a way. I can certainly see that as a way that Magnus would see a path forward for his Legion.
Yeah.
Originally, the first Grand Master of the Grey Knights was a Thousand Son sorcerer. In case you didn't know that, a guy called Janus.
Yeah.
So Magnus taking on the role of Janus would be really interesting, and also it shows that the Thousand Sons have a path forward, even if not necessarily as the 15th Legion anymore. They might disband the Legion. They might, cull through the candidates for becoming Grey Knights, and maybe some of those guys would shift over and become Grey Knights. But there's definitely a lot of evidence to show that would be a really a really good role for Magnus and his Legion going forward if he remained loyal.
Okay, sorry, my cat took the longest poop in the history of forever.
Thank you for telling us all about it.
You're
Can
welcome.
you describe the consistency of the poop?
Like this big, chunky, kind of looks like a Reese's cup.
Oh my God.
Anywho,
I
that doesn't
regret
make any
everything.
sense.
I regretted everything.
So Ross, to add to your point though, there is, okay, this is, you want to talk about reaching, right?
Okay.
This is reaching at like the Olympic level. Like this would make Primarchs blush with how much I am reaching. Okay? Zinch would be looking at me and be like, what the hell are you reaching for? You have gone even further than beyond. That's a Dragon Ball Z reference. Anyway.
It's over 9,000.
Yeah, dude, now he's got to run around like an idiot. But I think, okay, we go with your idea. Magnus comes back to Terra. Malgador makes a call for somebody to be brought back to Terra to be kept safe. Somebody who could... Are you good, Kovu? Somebody who could potentially teach a safer way of using psychic powers through a little thing called faith.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about Euphrates Keeler.
Euphrates Keeler,
yeah,
towards the end of the stories, is brought to the Imperial Palace to be protected, strictly under the orders of Malgador.
I'm gonna need to run for a minute. Can you hold the fort for me for a little bit?
Yes.
Thank you.
Malgador. Okay, you know what? It's gonna be me. I am big now. Anyway, Malgador. Kovu, chill. He wanted to. I could see him wanting to make the Grey Knights because we know he did create the Grey Knights. He also created the Assassinorum, and he also created the. Oh my God, the Knights Errant. He created the Stormtroopers. He created a whole bunch of stuff. I can see Euphrates Keeler being brought back, the Thousand Sons brought in, and sanctified demonology being taught through the power of faith and magic. Well, psychic energy, 40k's magic. And that's what actually protects the Thousand Sons from horribly mutating into possessed monstrosities, and instead protects their souls as they fight now against the forces of chaos, led by potentially Dracnian. Because we could have things like Dracnian, Samas, Scabatrax, Zarakanil, and the bird. I can't remember the bird's name. I remembered Scabatrax and Zarakanil, which, if you don't know, Scabatrax is the Great Unclean One of Nurgle during the time of the Heresy. That's one of them. There's several of them. There's also Zarakanil is the Keeper of Secrets that's in the Heresy. Also made a 40k appearance as well. If Ross doesn't come back with ice cream to share. He never does. We riot. You know what? I'm right there with you, Biofoot. I'm right there with you. But in this alternate future, I think it's going to be a much, much longer heresy. I think that I think what happens is that I read this one for you.
I did not bring ice cream to share, Biofoot. I'm so sorry.
Riot! But I think in this alternate future where the Emperor has the Webway, the Emperor has Magnus, it's going to be a pitched battle at this point. It is going to drag out for thousands of years. I think at the time of 40k, we are going to have potentially Horus still alive and active and constantly battling the Imperium to take land, lose land, take land again. And it's going to be like that. Instead of the Imperial Palace getting sieged, it's now Imperial supply lines getting sieged, worlds getting corrupted. Kind of like what's happening today, but on a much grander scale. Because now you have all of the fallen Primarchs, except for Magnus, fighting against you.
Got a super chat from Ricardo Andre says, to be clear, Ross, everything on Terra is gone, including the Astronomicon, the palace, etc. Also, humanity got Eldari treatment, so their souls go to a new god, not the
Donkey Kong.
I don't know what DK is. So souls go to new god to the emperor, I guess in this case, not to the ruinous powers. That's probably what he meant. Interesting, Ricardo Andre. Dark King. Sorry, Dark King is what DK stands for. Okay, got it.
No,
Dark
it's
King.
Donkey Kong or Drift King.
So destroying Terra and everything on it would be very, as he points out, extremely hard to rebuild. You're right. You're absolutely right about that. It would cause a sustained period of major issues and problems if Sol were to be destroyed. However, losing the Emperor means much longer, in my opinion, and much more devastating problems. So I'm gonna stick to my answer, but I think you did point out some very good elements of that. Yeah, the most ideal outcome here is a loyal Magnus. Magnus delivers his warning, probably gets on a ship, goes directly to Terra, walks into the Imperial Palace rather than psychically transporting himself there, and has a discussion with the Emperor, right? And in this most ideal way, it would mean that Prospero doesn't burn, Magnus does not feel huge amounts of grief and shame and rage. There's no reason for Magnus to fall to chaos. The only thing would be, Tzeentch still in the background, but we're talking about the ideal outcome here.
Yep.
And in the ideal outcome, you have a loyal Magnus that transforms your military. It gives you a major psychic asset. He's the most powerful psyker in the Imperium after the Emperor himself, arguably, again, which would make his presence at any major engagement decisive. Magnus would turn the tide. Any psychic battles that Chaos prosecuted during the Heresy, like trying to corrupt Sanguinius and his Blood Angels at Cygnus Prime, there would be a counter to that. And the Thousand Sons, in this case, could be broken up amongst all the legions. They would be emissaries sent out. You would have a super librarius, in if you want to talk about the ideal way, where all the librarians of the other legions are taught by or assisted by Thousand Sun Psychers, who are giving them all the benefits of Magnus's training and everything along those ways. Horus's plan depended enormously on neutralizing loyal Psyker followers. So Magnus could unravel that calculus in seconds, which is pretty great. And critically, if the Webway project survived, Magnus, as the guardian of the throne, he becomes fulfilled rather than wasted. This gives Magnus a purpose. This gives him a destiny that he can understand and find meaningful, right? These are important things. And if the confrontation still occurs between the Emperor and Horus, the Emperor's survival is almost guaranteed, because he wouldn't have the pressure of having to also keep the Webway portal closed. And that would mean that the post-Heresy Imperium would be utterly changed. Positive for Magnus, certainly. Maybe not positive for everyone else, because the Emperor is so freaking profoundly flawed.
Yeah.
But that's where I see the ideal outcome. Like that's the golden path, if you will.
Here's how I think Tzeentch tries to trick Magnus into joining Chaos, though. After Magnus doesn't send the message and obliterate all of everything, Tzeentch forces the change, right? Turning all of his sons into Chaos Spawn. The Emperor offers him an alternative. I can protect their souls, but their bodies will be obliterated. Would you be willing to sacrifice all of your sons for the Imperium? I think Magnus would. I don't think Mortarion had the strength of character to do it, and that's why he became a dumb, stupid moth.
We need to do an episode on Mortarion really bad.
I do. He's a lot cooler than I give him credit for. I do love him as a character. I think he's super petty, and I absolutely love it. But I can see Magnus going, I understand what I have to do. But I can also see Armin falling to chaos to protect his legion. I can also see Iskandar Kion falling to chaos to do much the same. And those two are very, very powerful psychers, like insanely powerful psychers. It's arguable who is stronger between Iskandar and Armin. Armin claims to be the strongest, and most books support him being the strongest.
Armin is, I mean, Iskandar is strong. Not gonna lie.
Iskandar assumes that he's the strongest.
Iskandar is strong. Armin cast a spell that affected everybody in his entire legion. Iskandar has never done anything that close to that level of awesome.
I don't know.
Armin got into the Black Library.
No, he didn't make it into the Black Library.
Well, he came damn close.
Yeah, until your brain showed up and was just like, haha, your boys are like, poof.
Right, but Iskandar never achieved anything like that. No, Armin's way stronger than Iskandar.
I mean, Iskandar invaded Terra by himself.
True. I'm not saying Iskandar is strong. I'm saying Armin is stronger.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Armin is stronger. I also love that Iskandar believes he's stronger. Although he does have a deck of 64 demons, which is probably the coolest shit in the world. Literally keeps him like fucking Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I summon Keeper in attack mode.
Iskandar is one of my favorite characters from the Thousand Suns, and you have a pretty good amount of interesting characters. You've got Armin, you've got Aemon, you've got there's others that are really, really cool, but
yeah,
Iskandar is one of my favorite Thousand Suns.
And it's one of the few confirmed cases of necromancy in all of 40k, where he brought back the Drukhari, which is very rare because, weirdly enough, necromancy is not common in Warhammer. Like, I think outside of like certain gods in fantasy, necromancy is rare.
Well, it's extremely rare in 40k.
Yeah,
and we to the point where we have to like very specifically define what it even is. But if we're talking about this alternate timeline, I think the one thing we really need to mention here is the inescapable role of Tzeentch. So Tzeentch was.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Tzeentch, the Changer of Voice. He was planning Magnus's fall since long before the Heresy, and the flesh change itself may have been a manipulation by Tzeentch to try and force a condition to get Magnus into these bad bargains and ultimately into Chaos's grasp. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
I think Tzeentch definitely takes center stage at this point. Maybe getting directly involved. Unlikely, but maybe getting directly involved. I gotta put this out there for people. Unlike fantasy and AOS, the Chaos Gods in 40k are very different. They don't necessarily do anything. They just kind of have their demon emissaries do things for them and say it's for them. But it's not really... Chaos isn't like there is no Slanesh god that is just one being like the one on my arm. This isn't really a thing in 40k, unfortunately. It was way back in the day, but nowadays it's more like collective ideas and thoughts that become a collective that subconsciously tries to push itself and pushes its ways onto humanity and all sentient species in the galaxy. But I could see them taking a much bigger role because they have to step up. Where originally they were electing a champion to fight the Emperor, now it might be several champions. They might give their powers to more mortal beings that seek powers. We might actually see demon princes start appearing way earlier in the lore than we normally do. Granted, there are demon princes early on in the lore. Be'lakor is technically a demon prince. There are several demon princes in 40k's lore, but during the Heresy, the rune storm didn't create demon princes, it created archdemons, which are they're demon prince adjacent. So there is slight differences. But I can see demon princes being way more of a thing in Heresy now, because the demons need to step up and do something. The gods need to step up and actually participate more. We might see more instances of big titan killing demons showing up, which were extremely rare. It really depends, because now with no way to destroy or distract the Emperor, they now need to concentrate more of their force. The rune storm might actually be smaller to hyper concentrate that power within the soul sector, more than likely over Terra. Like, instead of trying to keep certain demonically possessed void whales, god damn it, I could point to one that actually exists, and I hate that I can. But anyway, I think it's the long war. I that's where I think the battle goes. It goes into the long war with demons getting more and more involved.
I think one of the ways you can think about the Chaos Gods of 40k is they are warp phenomena that has been anthropomorphized by belief. We see a warp storm in the Immaterium, and we're like, oh, that is a being, and we will give that being a name, and we will call it Korn. There's certainly in the old days, the Chaos Gods were very much like, I have an agenda, and I have rivals, and I have plans and decisions and things that I make. But especially in the later lore, they seem more like cosmic storms, cosmic forces that we are looking at as if they are a being, but are not necessarily actually a sentient creature, if you want to think of it that way.
Except for in Plague Wars, where Nurgle is actually referred to as a creature, but that's to another god.
I mean, it's a matter of perspective, and these things may change. So, with that in mind, Tzeentch, though, Tzeentch is simultaneously a being who sees all outcomes, and also at the same time, very well documented, will sabotage himself if he gets too close to winning. So it's kind of anyone's guess. Like, you could make the argument that as a being who doesn't necessarily experience linear time, Tzeentch had planned for Magnus to fall from the very beginning, and that any attempt to find a clean exit could face the very uncomfortable possibility that none was ever truly available. But again, you're definitely that's falling very heavily on the idea that Tzeentch is a being with agency and choices and plans, and also doesn't fail, which, as we know, Tzeentch does fail and has sabotaged himself. So,
I mean,
it's not really.
Even in Old World, when the end times happened, Tzeentch failed. Like, overall, Tzeentch failed. Like, Chaos won, and then Tzeentch died, and then came back because, well, the game needed to continue. GW needed more money.
Yeah, I would say if you're a fatalist, the idea that Tzeentch could not be Tzeentch's plan could never be beaten is where you're going to land. But otherwise, I would say Tzeentch thrives on a complex, often self-defeating plans, and his schemes can and do fail when mortals act against his expectations. So Magnus, who obeys the Edict of Nicaea, who refuses any further bargains with Tzeentch, that does break the pattern that Tzeentch may have engineered. That doesn't mean they can't adapt. We talked about Chaos adapting and finding another way to corrupt Magnus, which that certainly could be. I think that's the more likely avenues that they'll adapt. But Magnus's pride and his love for his sons, his certainty in his own judgment, these are the levers that would be pulled on in either case. And they were certainly the ones that were pulled on in the timeline that does exist for 40k. But obedience, paradoxically, is the one weapon that Magnus never used. So, maybe that is the trick. That is the one trick. Hey, one great trick to beat the Chaos Gods at their own game. Number 6 will surprise you.
I mean, if you're gonna beat a Chaos God, you have to be really, really, really out there with your methods.
Well, yeah, I love the idea that Magnus could be the founder of the Grey Knights. That's one of my favorites.
See, literally, Rush, you are correct. If Magnus did nothing, he would have succeeded. But he did nothing wrong and failed because of it. He did nothing, wrong.
Yeah, so there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Magnus was meant to sit on the Golden Throne. The Golden Throne requires precisely 1,000 psychers per day to sustain it. The Thousand Sons Legion's name has been provocatively suggestive along those lines. The Fury Magnus short story, even even some entries in Games Workshop's own writing about the Golden Throne suggest that in the absence of the Emperor, Magnus would have been the one to run it. We do know that Malkador was forced into doing this, and that's what killed him, was being placed on the Golden Throne. And here's where that part about endurance making you stronger comes from, is that Magnus can endure where Malkador could not.
Yeah.
So that's the thing I was going to mention there. If Magnus did become that pilot of the Golden Throne, if you want to say that, leaving aside the webway, then Magnus sitting on the throne, powering the Astronomicon, that frees the Emperor up to actively govern. I mean, not necessarily a good idea, to be very clear.
What?
This is not necessarily a positive outcome. And the Thousand Sons, the Legion, then probably becomes the fuel to sustain the mechanism, at least for a while, until, the black ships and the whole 1,000 psychers a day picks up the slack, if you will. And that's honestly scary, and it's hopeful, but it's also very scary, because I definitely do not love the idea of the Emperor actively governing the Imperium. Oh God!
You mean the guy that causes probably quadrillions of people to suffer to death every single day, to create a perpetual war machine, to constantly oppress every other free-thinking person or creature across the entire galaxy, isn't good?
And let's not forget that warning the Emperor may not have worked anyway. It may not have changed anything at all. Even if Magnus walked to Terra, it may not have changed anything, because Nathaniel Garrow, when he gave testimony about Isstvan 3, Malkador was skeptical. He's like, really? And Garrow was there.
Mm-hmm. Which is weird, because they could have just read his mind, saw his thoughts, and just been like, oh, well, that's bad.
Malkador could have certainly done that, but it didn't even occur to him. Whereas in the actual timeline, when Magnus did go to Terra and did try to warn the Emperor wasn't interested. He was like, I don't even care what you have to say. Look at what you've done, right? So to focus on the webway breach rather than the intelligence suggests that the Emperor either knew and didn't care, or didn't care about knowing, which neither of those is a good answer.
Well, the Emperor couldn't, okay, when the breach into the webway happened, the Emperor had to get involved, because if he didn't, Draknion would have killed his entire force. Well, Draknion and all the billions of demons. And I'm giving the win to Draknion.
And if you look at the Council of Nicaea as a purely political move, that's one thing. But it's also suspiciously aimed towards Magnus and the Thousand Sons. And it's possible that while the council itself may have been some sort of political stagecraft, the edict that followed it could have been that the Emperor's grand plan required a sacrifice, and Magnus was always going to be that sacrifice. And they were like, hey, the council is a great opportunity to start setting up that domino to fall.
That's so rude.
It is not out of character for the Emperor, not even a
No.
little bit.
Could you imagine if the Emperor had empathy? Like, just be like,
no, that's the real what if. What if
that's
the
a
Emperor
good
had
what if.
empathy? What if the Emperor had empathy? That's the bright hope future.
What if the Emperor listened to his wife? No, okay. Because, like, it would have taken 10 seconds to pull Magnus aside really quickly and just been like, hey, son, okay, listen up, champ. All right, I'm going to say a bunch of naughty things in there, and you're going to get very upset. But just know it's not targeted at you specifically, but your legion is dangerous, okay? All right, champ. Okay, don't stop crying. Don't worry. We'll go get ice cream afterwards. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to bring your legion and your guys into the soul sector, and we're going to properly train you. Okay? I want a milkshake. You can get ice cream.
The fatalist reading of this is that Magnus was never free. Never going to be free from the Emperor, never going to be free from Tzeentch. If Magnus had just obeyed, cool, Tzeentch would have just started to pick off the Thousand Sons one by one using the flesh change and find some other moment of desperation to get his hooks into Magnus. So there is the really grim dark, although that is also very 40k as well. If there is a consensus, I think that a loyal Magnus would eventually sit on the Golden Throne. I think that the heresy would be shorter and less catastrophic due to early intelligence. And I think that the Grey Knights would have a very dramatically different origin under Magnus's guidance. But I also think that the galaxy would still burn, not because individuals failed, but because the forces arrayed against humanity are patient and vast and intimately familiar with human flaws, including, most especially, pride.
Mm-hmm. Also, to give your to harken back to Odin, the mythos around Odin is that he is never free from Ragnarok. Is that no matter what he does, no matter what future he sees, no matter what wisdom he gets, it is an inevitability that he will be a part of the death and renewal cycle of Ragnarok.
However, and I've noticed a lot of people in the comments bringing up Perturabo and the Iron Warriors. Let's talk about that briefly.
Okay. All right.
So
Perturabo is a Reddit mod.
Perturabo was never enthusiastic about chaos. He was never even enthusiastic about Horus. He largely joined Horus' side out of resentment, exhaustion, and the massacre of his own men on Olympia. If the heresy is shorter and less grinding, if the loyal forces are warned early and the loyal legions survive Istvan, then the Iron Warriors may never actually hit that breaking point.
Ooh.
Just saying. I'm just saying. It's not guaranteed because all the flaws and all the problems are still there. It's a question of, can this change things in time for Perturabo?
Weirdly enough, Perturabo and Lion were, well, not close, but as close as those two could be to each other. I can imagine Perturabo seeking his counsel on this.
Well, I know who Perturabo would not seek counsel from.
Who?
Rogel Dorn.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, not at all. In fact, he might still go renegade at the end of this anyway, just to topple Rogel Dorn out of pity.
I'm not saying, I'm not saying that this would have stopped the Iron Warriors from going bad. I think it's just a question of it creates a window.
Mm-hmm.
It creates a window in which they could be potentially rescued from the last straw, if you will. And this is not an episode about the Iron Warriors. It's not an episode about Perturabo, but I thought people are bringing it up quite a bit that he and Magnus were close and that there were things that could have affected. And I wanted to bring that up as a possibility because I'm not sure it's something that not a lot of people think about when it comes to the Heresy.
What if Perturabo came and fortified Magnus's city?
Oh, what if Perturabo fortified Tizca?
Yeah.
Scary. That's
Right.
frightening.
Yeah.
Although it would be more likely Dorn could fortify it and Perturabo
Yes,
would siege it, but Perturabo could have improved on it. Certainly, Magnus did not care about the defense of the city. That never even occurred to him as a thing he needed to do. What was Erebus' role in all this?
I think Erebus would have to take a much bigger role in this already, because he has a huge role in the Heresy. He's the starter. I think at this point, having Magnus not being corrupted, he would start targeting any and all potentially corruptible Marines. He would target first captains. He would target named people in the Heresy. He would look for the weakest links in all of the potential legions that remained loyal, inform Horus, and then Horus would commune with them privately or try to get an audience with them to try to corrupt them. We might see things like Jagatai Khan actually having to fight half his White Scars because nearly half his White Scars fell to chaos. We could have things like Horus actually going back to Caliban and actually talking to all of them there to get him on his side, to get more forces. There are fallen Ultramarines as well that fell to chaos, and he could be taking his hand in that. So I think Erebus's role in all of this and Alfarius's role in all of this will still be searching for those weak points, those little breaks in the armor that can be exploited and handed over to Horus's men so that he can gather as much forces as possible, and then having that plus the Runestorm to try to siege Terra. But he would still need something to break into the webway. So it's either he needs to make a deal with the Drukhari, which were barely active, mind you, or he needs to make a deal with maybe Vashtor, if Vashtor wants to appear at this point. We know Vashtor was a thing, but he wasn't really Vashtor yet. It was just, well, there is a dark machine god mentioned in the Milita book. Take that with a grain of salt. It's in rules, not actual lore.
You may notice I'm wearing a gray shirt today. Can you imagine what symbolism a gray shirt might represent with regards to Magnus?
Gray Knights.
I mean, it could, but it could also just be that Magnus definitely falls within the shades of gray. In the Heresy. With regards to Erebus, if I may.
Yep, go right ahead.
Erebus is the character who most requires Magnus to fall in order for his plans to work. Magnus's fall gives Horus a scapegoat. It gives Leman Russ a righteous war. It strips the Imperium of its best psychic intelligence asset and provides a model of how trusted Primarchs could be turned against each other. A Magnus who obeys doesn't just survive. He becomes Erebus's most dangerous natural enemy. A psyker of unmatched power with a personal grudge against chaos and a specific detailed knowledge, or at least potentially specific detailed knowledge, of exactly how the conspiracy was constructed. And if you put Erebus and Magnus in the same room, a loyal Magnus who's been made more aware of chaos, I mean, we talked about this earlier, that Magnus may be the way to sniff out where the conspiracy began in the first place.
So, okay, here's the question. Erebus's arguably greatest feat in all of the Heresy was when he fought Erda. I know this is weird. I bring her up a lot. I really like the character. But he does summon 4 greater demons to fight her. She eventually beats most of them before I won't spoil the rest. Okay? if Magnus has to face 4 greater demons, I'm still putting my money on Magnus. Like
I put
his
my money on just about any Primarch against 4 greater demons.
like, excluding the Runestorm greater demons. Because again, the giant psychic storm made them more powerful. But
Yeah,
regular
I'm talking
greater
about
demons,
your bog standard greater demon of Nurgle, greater demon of Slaanesh, etc.
yeah. I think Magnus handles that. Magnus might even be able to strip power from him before he finishes his summoning, which would be, or just blitz him.
You know, Horus had him flayed, right?
Yeah.
So Horus stripped him of his skin. maybe
But,
maybe
like,
Magnus can strip him of his power.
it's okay. So that's not out of the realm of possibilities for a psychic phenomenon. And if you're going to talk about the master of like psychic abilities, well, master in his mind, he's the master of psychic abilities. I guarantee you, he could power drain Erebus's ability to summon greater demons.
So here's an even more unsettling question, and possibly the most 40k question of them all. What new catastrophes fill the vacuum left by the ones that were averted? And I think in this case, I'm going to ask this question. Magnus's sanity over 10,000 years on the Golden Throne. Magnus is extraordinarily powerful, but he's also defined by his curiosity, his need to understand and act and adapt and change, for Tzeentch's sake, to change. So being like Magnus, locked into this psychic support role for 10 millennia, he might not go mad the way the Emperor did, but he could be fundamentally transformed into a being that is not so great. A watchful, resentful mind at the heart of the Astronomicon.
Oh my god, it's like Conrad Kurz with the Astronomicon.
And all the flaws of Magnus would still persist if he's on the Golden Throne. So he's still got that overwhelming pride and self-confidence. And that over 10,000 years, he's almost certain to make some major mistakes because of that. And I'm just saying, the iron law of Warhammer 40k is that humanity always finds new ways to suffer.
Yeah.
The shape of the suffering just gets different. And I think in this case, I think Magnus, after 10,000 years on the throne, I don't think anybody would like to see what that would become.
So weirdly enough, let's fast forward to 40k. We fast forward the 10,000 years.
Oh my god.
Okay. Whoa. Anyway. All right. So we're in 40k now. The Beast Arises comes, M34, M36. Beast Arises comes, easily dealt with because the Emperor is there. Like, the Emperor, Magnus, the legions are still together. For the most part, they're not pursuing their enemies. So we still have that. Maybe the Codex Astartes is in effect to a certain point. All right? So the Beast Arises happens. Cool beans, it's dealt with. Let's get that story out of lore. I just completely, just remove it. Anyway. Then we get the Sisters of Battle, or vice versa. I forget which one is first. I think Sisters were what, M36?
That's the Reign of Blood.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the timeline.
But regardless, the Sisters of Battle. I don't think they happened with Magnus there.
Well, faith in general would be a very different thing. Because it's very likely the Emperor wouldn't be an immobile corpse god, right? M36. So it lasted around 200 years, the Reign of Blood. So the Sisters of Battle would have been around 6,000 years after Siege Terror.
Yeah, so the Sisters don't get to be made because religion is still outlawed. Potentially, we do get Sisters of Battle. Hear me out on this. But they're from the Mechanicum. So they're what is it called? Like cog touched or something? Sounds dirty. Machine touched. They're machine-touched individuals versus the, emperor-touched sisters.
Could there be miracles from the Omnissiah in that case?
So it's
I
extremely
mean, right, other than the techno canticles that the tech priests use in the current lore,
it's
right?
very, very, very rare, but it does happen. So that's a big can of worms. I don't know if the sisters would exist. I'm gonna say the Sisters of Battle as we know them don't exist, which means that there is a massive force that's specially coded to kill chaos cults doesn't exist. The Inquisition, however, does, because Malkador made that. The
That's right.
Inquisition probably has way more power than it does now, because it has the backing of Malkador, who is alive at this point because he's a perpetual.
Malkador would be alive. That's true. He's a perpetual.
So we would have the awakening of the Necrons. That happens, I think, again in M36 is the first awakenings. Well, depending on when you want to say the first awakenings were, because there were metallic men in the Heresy, but they weren't Necrons, but maybe they were.
I mean, yeah, there were certainly Necrons awake during the Horus Heresy. Trazyn
was
he took a lot of things from his collection at that point. He considered the Horus Heresy high drama, in fact.
Yes, he loved it.
Well,
he was also
he loved the drama of it. I mean, I wouldn't say he was just like cackling with glee or anything, but he was certainly
a big fan though.
He liked the drama. That's what he liked about it.
I imagine he has his like little sports finger for his favorite team. He's like, yeah, let's go Imperial
his foam
Fist.
finger.
What legion would he like?
I don't know, maybe all of them.
Blood
Ravens. He would have been a big Blood Raven guy.
So he would like whoever the Blood Ravens chapter progenitor is. But anyway, so we don't have Sisters of Battle. Orcs are now kind of a threat, but the Great Crusades can keep happening, which could keep clearing them. But as the orcs become a threat, Chaos then attacks, which is now led by Horus, who is not dead, but keeps hitting and running, doing the Long War now. We have a divided Mechanicum, Dark Mechanicum, potentially still. With the Dark Mechanicum being banished and the Mechanicum maintaining themselves, we have a full and fully trained Grey Knight Order under Magnus, which is insane to think about. Katarina Greyfax never gets kidnapped by Trazyn, maybe. That's still a big maybe. He probably still does take her. And let's see. Cadia doesn't need to fall at that point. Or maybe it does earlier because of Horus leading it and not Abaddon.
Well, the amount of things that change is insane, because almost everything that is a major piece of what we know as the Imperium, like the ossification of bureaucracy and the turning of technology into religion and the faith of the ecclesiarchy, those are all predicated on an emperor who cannot act, who is stuck on the golden throne. So Magnus, if Magnus survives and is on that golden throne, it changes everything. If Magnus survives and the emperor still gets put on the golden throne somehow, that is, I think, where more interesting discussions can be had, because now we have a more concrete frame of reference for what is happening around Magnus.
Yeah, I think still the conflict with Horus goes. He still gets mortally wounded. Let's just say the plot demanded it.
It kind of does.
It really does. He gets oopsie doodled onto the golden throne because they don't have any other better ideas. It's not like they have legions upon legions of apothecaries to try to tend to him, or any other type of like biomancers. Those are out of the way. But they put him on the golden throne. Magnus now has to lead from the front or lead from Saturn, which is where I think his legion would actually move to. I think Prospero still burns somehow. Maybe Tzeentch burns Prospero because he loses everything
or
when
Horus
he sides
does.
with the Emperor. Yeah, Horus probably burns it as well, or Erebus. Erebus would probably burn it.
Well, maybe it's Horus sending the word bearers. I mean, one of the things we talked about was the Horus sending the word bearers instead of the space wolves.
Yeah,
to take care of the problem.
and the few survivors go to Saturn to become Grey Knights.
Yeah, possibly. It's we have, I think, ventured down this road to where our headlights are now shining into the utter blackness of we have no idea what the hell would happen out there.
Yeah.
I do love the idea of him trying to warn Lion, though. I think that's one of the things one of the takeaways from this is I love the idea of Magnus saying, you know what, I'm not going to warn the Emperor. That's crazy. I'll instead warn Lion, who will then go tell the Emperor.
Or Lion doesn't tell the Emperor.
Right? Because he gets distracted or because he gets intercepted.
He just goes killing them. I think Lion just goes,
or
okay.
Lion turns the ship around and says, go find Horus and let's take him on.
Yeah. Or at least cripples some of the Chaos forces, just immediately crippling them. That would be nuts. Because then you have an Imperium going, Lion just opened fire. And then the Emperor would be like, Lion wouldn't do that without me telling him to do that. What's happening?
Right.
Let me commune with Lion.
And then maybe we still get the burning of Prospero just in a different form. I don't know. It's fascinating. I think I would like to hear from chat. We have 20 minutes left. So chat, if you have some theories or thoughts or questions that you want to ask about what if, this whole what if scenario, now's the time, because I think Alexis and I can put our attention on what you guys think, and we want to hear from you. Yes. Professor Schaap says if Horus is alive, maybe arguable that the traitor legions are more united, almost certainly. Because even defeated, I feel like Horus has the charisma to keep the traitors a bit more together. Yes, he does. Horus is extremely charismatic.
I mean, he, like, in terms of D&D, Horus is randomly a bard.
Well, he was respected. Every Primarch was like, Horus is really good at what he does.
Saying bards aren't respected. Oh yeah, I see how it is. I'm joking.
You could, again, it was very close between him and Sanguinius for the choice of War Master. And it came down to Horus was just a better general and organizer than Sanguinius was. Whereas Sanguinius had more, he was more loved by the other Primarchs. Lichlord Kier says, do they accidentally leave the light on and attract the bugs? The Pharaoh's device is what he's talking about here.
While this may seem silly, yeah, the Tyranids might actually come earlier. That's a very real thing that might happen. We have a brighter Astronomicon because of Magnus.
Is it brighter, do you think?
I would assume that it's brighter with a living body on it than with a dead body on it.
Well, the Astronomicon was, there doesn't seem to be any difference from when the Emperor was not wounded by Horus and after he was wounded by Horus. It's still the same light.
The only thing that we get is after he died, it flickers every now and then.
Right. But that's, I mean, the character of it, the brightness doesn't change.
All right.
I don't know. I don't know if this, I don't know if Magnus's character would impact the Astronomicon in any way. So
do you think the Silent King might return to the galaxy earlier? Because that would bring the Tyranids in.
Possibly. I don't know. This is one of those cases where I don't think I have enough information to say whether Magnus's impact would change. We do have a couple of questions here. We have one from Wolfboy. What would happen to the normal human psychic school? The Adeptus Astrotelepathica or the Scholastica Psychana, I think is what he's discussing. Probably the Scholastica. Well,
I think
Magnus,
we might get more of them.
Well, Magnus would be, he was a very good teacher, and he knew a hell of a lot about how psychic stuff worked. Him being on Terra would give these people access to much more, to a greater perspective on how psychic abilities in the warp works. It's quite possible that we would have stronger and more well-trained psychers in the Imperium.
Now to tell you the dumb thing that I thought of, because of course I did. the teachers and everything at the Psychana are wheeling in like a TV, and on it, instead of Bill Nye the Science Guy, it's just Magnus' head, and they're like, Magnus, Magnus, Magnus,
All the kids love
Magnus, the
Magnus.
psychic guy.
All kids love the red-skinned guy with one eye, I'm sure. Rush 21129 says, "What if one faction was able to point the orcs in the direction of their enemy?" Well, I mean, the Inquisition kind of did this with the Actarius War. Kind of.
It is possible, but are we talking the Beast? Because if we're talking like M34, the Beast arises. I mean, weirdly enough, I could see Horus convincing the Beast to attack as a diversion.
Horus would definitely have that. That would be something he could probably do, because Horus did know orcs very well. He fought Urlak on Ullanor.
Yeah.
So Horus having, I guess what you're saying is, if Magnus lives, then so does Horus.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, then yeah. Interesting idea there.
Because I think if Magnus sides with the Emperor, Horus now knows that he can't directly assault Terra.
He probably turns it into more of a stalemate, doesn't it?
Yeah, it turns it into the Long War, which is what Abaddon is doing, but now led by Horus.
Yeah, and in that circumstance, Horus would absolutely be like, "Hey, other things come attack." Okay, that's where you get the Tyranids. In this case, is Horus would find a way to introduce. He'd be like, you know what? As long as the galaxy burns, I don't really care. Bring in the Tyranids, bring in the Beast, and
awaken the Nephilim.
And he would absolutely do his best to aim those things at the Imperium. And Horus would be far more successful at it than anybody else. So that is a fascinating idea. You get almost get kind of a Legion of Doom feeling out of it, don't you? Mm-hmm. Where Horus is like, "Hey, the Beast, you know, you and I could work well together."
Mm-hmm. And I like that a lot.
And Imhotep the Stormlord, how would you like to be a part of my council?
I think Imhotep would be more interested in the Golden Throne than he is with Horus.
Depends. Rush 21129 says there's no need for the Pharos Beacon if the Emperor is fine, so the Nids don't get tipped off. Well, so the Pharos Beacon was actually activated while the Emperor was fine, and that's because of the Ruin Storm cut off Ultramar from Terra. They couldn't send signals back and forth. So the Pharos device was a backup Astronomicon because they couldn't see their regular Astronomicon. It's possible that this could still happen. It's very likely, in fact, that it could still happen. But I also really like the previous guy talking about how Horus could engineer this kind of thing as a distraction to keep the Imperium off balance while he prosecutes the Long War his way.
Magnus, the magic guy. Magic rules.
Yeah, he says I see this tipping the scales rather than being decisive. Yeah, it's definitely more of a let's you and him fight kind of situation. I'll sit back, throw some knives in the room, let you two guys fight, and that distracts you while we do our own thing or regroup or build our new. Can you imagine a Black Crusade under Horus? Yeah.
Oh.
Yikes.
Oh yeah, and the Tau would exist. Huh.
Drusina question. The Hrud become the biggest enemy.
You know, they would do
How dare you? How dare you, sir?
Horus with planet killer.
Yeah, baby. Or the Gothic War takes on a whole new tone of with Horus in charge. Yikes.
Admiral Spire still kicks his ass.
I mean, I'd like to think so, but I don't know. So we are. We got one more here from Professor Shapp. If Perturabo does not go traitor and it becomes a Long War, I can see Horus making secret overtures to convince Purdy to go renegade in the wake of a Black Crusade. Yeah, Perturabo was on the path, just like Conrad Kurz was on the path. They were already heading towards a very bad end.
Oh, don't you do that to me, Hawk. I see you there. I'm not going to read that. Damn it.
Hawk says Horus with attack moons.
God damn it.
Oh, we're getting tortured over here. I love it. Moritz von der Borch, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Moritz von der Borch says interactions between Horus and Magnus during a Black Crusade would be very interesting. Yeah, a loyalist Magnus and a corrupted Horus having a conversation. I would love to see that. I would be all in on that.
Hold on. It has to be written by Aaron Dinsky Bowden.
Fair to say, he can write some damn good books about people having differences of opinions.
Yeah. I could definitely see that.
We're in our last 10 minutes of the show. So, Alexis, let me ask you this. What are your final thoughts? And this, you can take as long as you want. Final thoughts on what if Magnus had heeded the Emperor's advice?
So, how to put this? I think that Magnus, as a character, fundamentally wanted to do the right thing, but he was manipulated by people far more tricky than he ever imagined. He wanted to do something correct, something courageous, something from his heart, and he was manipulated into doing something so catastrophically devastating that it ruined the entire future of the Imperium. It ultimately led to the Emperor's death in quotes. It led to every one of his brothers falling or being corrupted in some way, shape, or form. And yes, I am even counting the loyalist Primarchs being corrupted, not by ruinous powers, but by the Long War itself. It led to the untold quadrillions of people being tortured every single day, knowing full well that they have to feed a war that never ends because of a mistake that Magnus himself made. If he only heeded that word, but I do think that Magnus ultimately would have thought that he was in the right no matter what. He does not have the foresight anymore because that's what Tzeentch took from him. While he can see the future, he cannot comprehend or empathize with anything that he has ever done. He does not have the emotional strength to understand the damage that he has done to the entire galaxy. And ultimately, I think he is the most damned Primarch out of all of them. While his brothers fell to anguish and to despair, some of them to
Rage.
Rage. Horus fell to being petty and feeling that his father did something outrageously bad. Horus fell not Horus, sorry. Magnus fell because he was too blind to see what he has done. That is my final thoughts on Magnus.
The story of Magnus the Red is, as I said at the very beginning of this episode, it's a tragedy within a tragedy. The whole Horus Heresy is tragic. Magnus is one of the most poignant, emotionally brutal bits of the Horus Heresy because, like Alexis said, he had good intentions. He wanted what was right, and he even tried to do what he thought was right, and screwed everything up along the way. I think we all can relate to that. We can all relate to having good intentions and absolutely screwing the pooch while trying to achieve those good intentions. Alexis also nails it when she talks about the flaws of Magnus, his pride, his inability to see that he could be wrong, his inability to plan for the worst as opposed to the best.
He's no Gosgull or Grimskull.
No,
he can't plan for his own failures.
It's easy to see a major inflection point happening with the Council of Nicaea and Magnus's decision to believe that he knew best and send a message to the Emperor, believing that was the right move. Like that it all comes together. You're like, yes, I see how we got here. Magnus is possibly one of the most sympathetic Primarchs because we know people like that, or we are people like that ourselves. Professor Shapp says very much the example of the road to hell being paved with good intentions. Yeah. My final thoughts are that Magnus screwed up in one of the most explosive ways you possibly can screw up, but he didn't do it on purpose, and he got punished for it very, very harshly, far more harshly than he deserved. And in that punishment, he doomed humanity, doomed the universe to 10,000 years of only war. You know, this is where we get to. But 40k wouldn't exist without him. Like, where all of this game and the setting that we love, it exists because of this tragedy, not in spite of it. So it's really fun and interesting to contemplate what that other timeline would look like. I'm not sure we would be as obsessed with it, though.
No.
We got a super chat from Biofoot. We've all screwed the pooch, Ross Watson 2026. Yes, go ahead and clip that. That is a I am Ross Watson and I support this message. We got one from Moritz von der Borch again. So Magnus was forced by Games Workshop to do nothing wrong so that we could have Warhammer 40k. I mean, the development of the story of the Horus Heresy is worth a whole episode in itself, because it started out as a paragraph like this big, and then became a card game.
Commanders.
Yeah, then became a card game, and then it got expanded way out, and then it became a 50+ novel series that got expanded way out, and then there were the black books that expanded it even more. I mean, it is an idea that has grown so much since its birth that it's impossible to say what was originally meant to be in any case. But I love the story of Magnus. I mean, I hate that it's a tragedy, but that's part of what storytelling, like, that's part of the power of storytelling. It gives us the feeling that we're alive. It allows us to experience the depths of despair and the highs of victory. You know, we get to taste all of those different flavors of life through stories. Magnus's story is it's a good lesson. Like, you can learn a lot from it, actually. That's one of the reasons why I really dig it, is you can see Magnus, you can see him being such a great and an admirable role model, and you can also see the cliff that he's about to step off of without even he has no knowledge of what is about to happen, and you're like, oh god, it's going to be so bad.
Magnus is what happens when gentle parenting meets an iPad.
I mean, maybe, quite possibly. Justina Quaitsheen says he didn't check his blind spot. His ego. What, you thought to make a joke about him having only one eye? Womp womp. Very good, Justina Quaitsheen. I love that one.
Also, there are some things in the Heresy novels that are just completely different to, like, the Heresy series of novels is one of my favorite things to try to explain to people, that Warhammer's lore has never been consistent. And one of the easiest examples is to point at the Custodians and be like, hey, Ross, do you remember when 6 Custodians lost to 1 Galvorback?
I do.
And then 1 Custodian couldn't beat Nathaniel Garrow?
I do. Yeah, and there's also one of my favorite Horus Heresy books is where the prisoners break out of the prison on Terra, and they do it by killing Custodians with their bare hands. And I was like, I really don't like that, but it's also written by Aaron Dembski-Bowden. Great book. It's a great book. But
it's a really weird part in the book.
It's like a very strange part where you're like, I don't think so. Justina Quaitsheen goes on. He says, of course, he was the one who made the mistake that caused everything. He was caught red-handed. Har, har, har. Very good. Very good. So yeah, that is our episode for today. If you have enjoyed this deep dive into the grim darkness of the far future, please do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button so we can spread our heresy to even more unwitting minds through the algorithm. We do Lorebeards 40,000 every Wednesday, every Saturday, 2 p.m. Mountain Time. And we have a poll up right now on YouTube if you want to go vote on what we're going to talk about on Saturday. Currently, I believe the front runner is last time I looked, the front runner. Yeah.
Oh my god, what is it? We're on the edge
down.
of our seats.
Calm down. Calm down.
Oh my God, what is it?
Calm down. Right now, it looks like the Minotaurs are in the lead. The Minotaur Space Marine chapter is what we might cover on Saturday.
Ooh, heck yeah.
That's pretty exciting. I like the Minotaurs. Anyway, if you also want to learn when we're putting up new polls and things like that, you can always go over and join our Discord. We have a pretty active one, and you can we like to participate in it. So you may also be able to talk to us and check out all the cool stuff that we got going on. I agree with this person right here. Hang on. Here's the question. Corswain is cooler. I agree with you 100%.
Yep, fully agree with that.
Hawkins put up the link to the Discord in the chat, so if you are curious about how to join the Discord, you can find that in the chat. It's also now it's in our show descriptions because we got taught how to do all that now.
Yep.
So that's pretty rad.
So, one last thing to say. In the grim darkness of the far future,
there is only lore.
Thank you for watching, everyone.